Welcome to Superwoo Radio, where we are awakening into being free and sovereign. It's a place where minds hurt and hearts sing as we break through the barriers that have been holding us back. Be prepared to have belief systems confronted as we take the journey of the truth seeker for answers to life's biggest questions. Remember, truth is stranger than fiction, so come along for an awareness-expanding experience with George and his amazing guest. Here on Superwoo Radio.
Hello and welcome, magnificent Earth humans and all you other wonderful beings throughout the universe, listening to our multi-dimensional broadcast here on Superwoo Radio, episode number 27, with Chris and Sheree Geo from the Truth Frequency Radio Network. Chris and Sheree Geo, welcome to Superwoo Radio.
Oh, it's a pleasure being here, definitely, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for all of the work that you've contributed to Truth Frequency, and it's great to be on your program as well.
Thank you for having us.
Well, Chris and Cherie, it's my honour too, and I have asked you on because you are very dear to my heart. I have a lot of respect for you. I understand on a personal level what you have been through because, you know, we have private conversations and we share our private lives with one another to a degree, as friends do. And I understand the fight that you've been in and also the wonderful times and the challenging times of you've built a radio network. That's by no means an easy task. And so for people to understand Chris and Cherie a little bit more, who are not familiar with who you are, of the Truth Frequency Radio Network, which is the one that you have amazingly built and created, shall I say, because it is an incredible creation, which I feel so honoured to have been a part of as well. Can you share with us a little bit about that journey? Because you were involved in other networks, and then there was circumstances which was an inspiration or a bit of a push and a shove, universally speaking, to steer you towards creating your own network.
Well, let's start from the very beginning. What do you think? I was a kind of a troll, for lack of a better term. I wasn't too much of a troll. I was a little bit of a troll on the Alex Jones forum. Cherie was a moderator, and the moderator said, look, you got to keep an eye on this guy because he's, you know, saying some things that's really going to change the views of the forum if people pick up to the facts that he's, you know, giving alternate opinions about things.
Oh, I love the wording.
I was a low level moderator on the forum, but yeah, that is kind of what happened. You watch out for this Chris Geo guy.
Right.
Yeah.
So she had, we'd been speaking for, I don't know, a couple of years, and it wasn't anything romantic or anything. We were just exchanging information, and that's it. She was married. I was engaged. I didn't think that there was, you know, that thought wasn't even in my mind at all. And then one day, David Icke was doing a presentation in Santa Fe. And I just said kind of jokingly, because my girlfriend at the time didn't want to go. She wasn't open to this information. And I really wanted to go see David Icke live. And I made a joke. And I said, hey, Cherie, you want to go to Santa Fe with me and see David Icke and run off with me? And she actually wrote me back and she said, yeah, let's do that. And I said, are you serious? Yeah. Let's just come and get me right now. She was 3.5 hours away. Come and get me. And that's it. And so I went and picked her up. We took off. We went to Santa Fe. We spent about a week there. And then I remember when I was dropping her off, it was one of the most intense emotional times because it was, the twin flame energies had come back together and then we were separating. We didn't understand. Yeah, exactly. We didn't understand what was happening at the time. We just understood that there was this extreme emotional disconnection. Like it was horrible. And circumstances just led to about a week later, she wound up coming over and we've been inseparable ever since. So the natural progression was I was working on an album, a music album, and I still hadn't finished it quite yet, but she came over and she did one of the songs with me, and that was kind of what sealed it. So, it really needed her energy to come in to solidify it. And Alex Jones kept saying, start your own radio show. You want to make a difference? Start your own radio show. Okay, that's exactly what we'll do. So November 5th, 2009, we didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. I remember the guest didn't show up. We were freaking out. It was like, she carried most of the show because I was just very nervous because we had a pretty good listenership right off the bat because we were both known on Alex Jones's forum. So they all wanted to come and see what we were doing. So we got a little Blog Talk account. And I remember we did our first show with the cell phones. And we realized that once we got on, there was an echo. There was a delay. So she had to go in the other room. And then so I was talking on my cell phone here. She was talking on her cell phone over there. It was horrible. And then the next show, we were passing the microphone back and forth. And the show after that, we finally got a mixer and 2 microphones. And we started getting things, in order. So that's all we thought it was going to be. Just something fun to do. And that's it. Michael Tessarian wrote me a couple of years prior to that, and he heard one of my songs and says, and he asked if he could use it in one of his videos. And I said, sure, of course, I'd be honored. And so he did. So I knew Michael from before, and I said, hey, Michael, I started the show. Would you mind coming on as a guest? And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So he came on as a guest. That opened up so many more doors. And then right off the bat, Truth Frequency just started taking off. I mean, instantly. And I think it was the twin flame energy. Everything was just happening exactly the way it should. So that evolved into us going on a couple of other networks. Now, here's what I learned from you. And this is most important, in my opinion, to embrace the darkness. Now, I didn't understand what that was when you had first talked about it, but it was the negative experiences that we went through on these other networks, the negative people that we encountered that we told ourselves we want to distance ourselves from, that made us take the show from a show into a network because we wanted to build a platform of our own, something void of that negativity, something on a more professional level, and get away from some of the negative things that we were experiencing on these other networks. We were on one particular network on Saturday evening. We would broadcast Sunday evening in the same time slot. The guy would just sit there and just bash all of our guests, bash all of our advertisers, and do all of that. And one day we got an email from somebody, and he says, hey, I was tuning into your show on Sunday night and I heard you bashing all these people. What's going on? No, that wasn't us. That was just because we had the feed on our website. But he got confused, and it was at that point that I realized we've got to do something. So we broke away from that, threw all caution to the wind once again. We didn't have a place to broadcast from. We were broadcasting from our website. Then it took like a year?
Yeah, about a year.
It took about a year to put everything together, and it was just trial and tribulation and learning how to put everything together. But now in 2014, it has just taken on a life of its own. And so we're broadcasting on GCN now, but we call it the Chris Geo Show. The reason we do that is for 2 reasons. One, it's easier to market instead of Truth Frequency. It's easier to market a person. But number 2, Truth Frequency has grown into such a huge thing.
It
no longer does. It belongs to everybody. It belongs to the listeners. It belongs to all the hosts on our network. It belongs to everybody who built it. So we kind of relinquish that, and the baby's grown up, and it's running on its own now.
Yeah.
Wow. And it is a fantastic network. You have quite a diverse, the diversity of show hosts and guests. It's really quite amazing.
Thank you. I can't take all the credit for it, though. Joe Joseph played a big role in it. Yep. Popeye played a big role. All these other people that we have on the network played a huge role. Christina, Sienna, all of the hosts. So That's why I said we kind of relinquished the name Truth Frequency and gave it to everybody, because it really is something way, way bigger than Chris and Cherie will ever be.
Yeah, not too sure about that. You guys are pretty big entities when it comes to the scale of the universe. I remember I have that sight. So going back to the subject at hand, I honestly feel that you've also had some pretty serious tribulations along the way. You've had to deal with stalkers, you've had to deal with all kinds of things. And, that has really shown me the quality and the integrity of the people that you are, having to deal with all these kinds of adversity. And still to be able to keep it together and move forward, and let alone, things like health issues along the way that you've had to deal with. So knowing what Cynthia and I are going through, and, observing and understanding the machinations of two people being in love and really trying to hold something together here, and dealing with all this adversity, I just want to acknowledge the way you've held it all together and the way you continue to strive forward in your unified field of love. I think you're a wonderful example for all to who know you on a personal level, to see what you guys have actually had to endure and continue to thrive on that personal level with.
Thank you. Thank you. It has, it's been a pretty tough journey, but that in hindsight was the motivating factors to build what we were building. And I can see now why the universe put those people in front of us, because if it wasn't for that, we would still be completely happy in the place that we are. I mean, it goes back to the Garden of Eden situation. If we never ate from the tree of knowledge and realized that being harmonious and being completely peaceful and love and light and happy all the time isn't doing anything but keeping us trapped in this particular bubble, we have to have the strife and the tribulation and the hard times in order to want to better ourselves, in order to want to move forward. It's a tough lesson to realize, and especially when you're going through it, it's so difficult. I mean, to have some of the most horrible things said about you by total strangers that you've never met before, that you've never done anything to. It's really it's a disheartening situation. A lot of people would just throw their hands up and quit. But we just said, you know what, if they're going to keep on flinging crap at us, well, let's just reach a higher and higher and higher level to where they can't throw the crap anymore. They can throw it all they want, but, we're on such a high level that it just doesn't even faze us anymore. And then I was watching a speech by Saddam Hussein during one of his trials, and he said something very interesting. He said, the lion doesn't care when the monkeys are laughing. And he's very true. He was completely 100% on that one.
Wow.
Yeah. Monkeys don't care when the monkeys laugh.
Wow.
These are very wise. Saddam and who's the other one? Gaddafi and all of them. When you really listen to their words, you realize that these are not they could very well be the dictators that we're talking about, but they are also very wise. And that's why they're in the leadership roles, because they are very wise people.
Very learned, very capable people. I think the way they're portrayed in the media publicly totally underestimates, people underestimate because of their perception of what the media tells them about these people.
Right. We have this perception that the whole world around us is just a bunch of dumb, cave dwellers, and that's it. And maybe that was the case in Iraq with a lot of the people that they were living third world. Libya, on the other hand, that was a completely different story. Those people were upper middle class. It was a first world country. They had free health care. The health care rivaled our hospitals here. Gas was 17 cents a gallon. Gaddafi gave his people everything. A home was a right. Electricity was free. If you got married, you got $50,000. If you wanted to start a farm, you got $50,000 plus. You got farm equipment and farmland. The list goes on and on and on of what Gaddafi was giving to the people. If you wanted to get a loan, it was interest free. All you had to do was help another business later on down the line to succeed. So, what we see in the media is completely backwards from what's actually going on.
Yeah, it's so now we're going to just dive straight into it, because another reason why I brought you on to Superwoo Radio is to give us an update as to what's happening on a geopolitical situation, yes, and also how it blends into the background, because my field of expertise, if I'm going to use that tag in any way, shape or form, is more the cosmopolitical agenda. That's where I specialize in. That's my field of work. It's what I came to this planet to deal with. So that's my vocation in life. Now, I don't have that much of an insight on the more geopolitical and how that geopolitical is starting to blend into the exopolitical and then to the cosmopolitical. So I know that you guys have got your finger on the pulse, both of you, and you're very learned in this area. And I really have a great deal of respect for you and your views and your understanding of the situation. So I wanted to bring our listeners up to speed with what's going on, because there's a strange lull at the moment. And it's like the calm before the storm. Something is brewing. I've been experiencing an incredible amount of interaction interdimensionally, an incredible amount. And the type of interaction I'm involved with at the moment, with I've had two races approach me directly recently. One is a branch of a Draconian forces, an elite force of the Draconian warriors, and the other one was a group of what's known as tall whites, but not the tall whites that we have come to know through the media as we know the tall whites. This is a pre-human version of the tall whites. A shall I say, version which blended with the reptilian, grey, draconian empire. This is a different group of tall whites, and they are specialised in time. They traverse, you see, there's different ways that beings can traverse through the universe, through the cosmic arena. There's two unifying fields of the cosmic arena. One of them is love. We understand the realm of unconditional love that ties. It's the glue that binds everything together in life. There's another one. It's time. Time is the one that the more technologically based races use to navigate their way through the universe, because time links everything. Everything has a life cycle. So time links absolutely everything. It's another thread that weaves through the tapestry of life. So this other group has to do with time, and I'll discuss more about that later because it's quite profound, this interaction that I had with them. But there's also how it links into the political side, what we're seeing in the world today. And you guys, I know, have your finger on the pulse. So what can you share with us how things are brewing up, how the chess pieces are being maneuvered behind the scenes, and what's actually coming into play from your perspective?
Well, as above, so below. And so what you see on the cosmic sphere of everything, you're going to see on the physical plane. I think that the physical is a symptom of what's going on in the spiritual. So fighting it on the spiritual first and foremost is very important, but also addressing it in the physical has to be done as well. You're absolutely right. It does feel like the calm before the storm. But what's been going on, in my opinion, is that a lot of the cabal's plans have just not been able to be put into place, whether it's spiritual forces, whether it's our collective consciousness. I do believe that we've already ascended into the fourth dimension or fifth dimension or whatever, dimension it is, the next dimension. But we're still shaking off the old third dimension as well. And it's kind of at a point right now where everything's kind of meshed together. And me personally, I'm feeling a lot more intuitive. I'm having more interdimensional and supernatural type of contact and experiences. My ayahuasca experiences are just amazing. I mean, I've gone to places I've never even fathomed before. Dreams are so much more vivid. They're prophetic dreams as well. So, I think that that's what the point that we are now. And what we're seeing is the old paradigm still in its death throes, and the third dimension still trying to take hold of as much as possible. But I think what's next on the agenda, and Cherie, tell me what you think about this, but I think the staged alien invasion is next. Because as Carol Rosen said, if it was 20 years ago, and I heard Carol saying this, I may have not believed her as much as I do now. She said first it was going to be the Russians, then it was going to be rogue nations, then it was going to be terrorists, then it was going to be asteroid threats, and the final card is the staged alien invasion. Well, everything's happened in the exact order that she said. We just got through the whole asteroid scare. Nibiru's coming, YU-55 is coming. then yeah, all of those. Now there's the quiet, and everybody's talking about aliens now. The Pope is talking about aliens. The government's talking about aliens. They're having conferences about aliens.
So the consciousness of humanity has been prepped for this event.
Yes. Yeah.
And the movies seem to be portraying that subject matter quite regularly.
Right.
The aliens are invading. We need to kill all the aliens or they're going to kill us. That kind of theme has been active since the late 90s when Independence Day came out. And ever since then, there's been this overwhelming urge, I guess, of these people in Hollywood and in the music industry to put this in their films and in their music videos. There was one particular music video where it was Katy Perry singing to an alien about I want to basically give myself to you.
Wow.
And mesh with you in a trans-dimensional kind of way. It's very bizarre.
Oh, you should see the video, though. The video is with her on top of the pyramid. The pyramid's flying. It's her on top of the pyramid, and the capstone's coming down. I mean, if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. But I think that's what's next on the agenda. And so that begs the question, though. This whole situation with Russia, this whole situation with the Ukraine, all of this, are these real situations that are taking place, or are these just puppet shows going on until they really bring out their final agenda, which is the staged alien invasion? It also begs the question, too, is there some kind of benevolent forces that are coming here at some point in time, and they've known that they're coming here at some point in time, and so they're moving to make them seem malevolent. They're moving to rally the people up against anything that comes our way, because these beings could very well be coming back to say, hey, look, we're going to teach you how to get along with each other. We're going to teach you higher consciousness. We're going to teach you telepathy. We're going to teach you all the things that these controllers have been veiling you from. Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine, but I do know that all around the United States, all around Europe, all around the world, really, there are revolutions going on. I mean, we've got the militias here with the Bundy Ranch situation, kicking the federal government out. The federal government's got their tail between their legs, running off. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not coming back with bigger and better guns, but it just goes
can you bring us up to speed with that? Because I'm not familiar with what that's about.
Well, it's a situation that I've got so many opinions on it. So, okay, basically, let me just start with the facts. The facts is that this rancher has a tax situation because he was letting his cattle graze on federal property, which was next door to his. He hasn't paid any grazing tax in, I don't know.
He owes approximately $1 million.
Yeah, about $1 million. Of course, who can pay $1 million? I mean, I can't just write a check and here's $1 million to the federal government.
You've got all those cattle. You don't have that kind of capital on demand. You're not a huge corporation, and that was the problem with him. It wasn't that he hadn't paid his taxes, and it wasn't that he was doing anything wrong. It goes back to the old feudalism of you don't forage on the king's land because that hurts the state. That hurts the actual country where you're grazing from. You're not allowed to forage in the king's forest.
It's just been discovered, though, who owns all the land.
Yeah.
You know who owns all the land around that area?
China.
No, Harry Reid.
Oh, well, Harry Reid.
Yeah.
But he's working with China through the Bureau of Land Management to sell all that land to the Chinese.
Right. So anyways, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But basically, they want to take away his land. They want to take away his cattle, etc. So all the militias got together with their arms and went over there and basically created a big barrier around the ranch and won't let anybody in.
Wow. So there's a real, almost like a modern day version of Waco happening here.
There's a standoff going on. Yes.
And
However, you start looking at the inner workings of the situation and the key players that are involved, then it gets suspect, and it seems like the puppet masters controlling both sides of it. Not that the militia guys who are standing there with the guns are federal agents, but the people at the higher ranks, the quote-unquote liaisons between the Bundy Ranch people and the militias and the federal government and all that, they all have very, very weird ties. So it could just be a staged event that's just, for the cameras in order to try to grab a little bit of land, or maybe even like the Edward Snowden situation where they put all this information out about the NSA spying to desensitize people rather than to actually expose anything. I think the Edward Snowden situation was just to get people debating on whether it's okay for the government to spy or not, also to get them to self-censor themselves. Because I even catch myself on Facebook going, okay, well, maybe I better reword this before DHS comes and takes down
exactly. I was thinking that's exactly for me when I tune into it. On another level, I'm not saying this is the sole reason for this occurring, but with the degree of surveillance taking place right now, they have the ability now to see all the communications between everybody who is a so-called patriot or who would be a militia in the mindset. They can now go through the process of identifying, and the people don't have to be involved whatsoever directly with it, but they will be in the background communicating to one another their thoughts and opinions on the matter, and they can now see who's who and what's what in the communities, who's got arms, who's got the intentions of being a militia type personality. So it brings them out of the woodwork, so to speak, for them to monitor who's who and what's what.
Exactly. And then not only that, but to apply that same line of thinking to the Bundy Ranch situation. When the federal government makes their move, then everybody around the country who is part of a militia is going to think twice about doing it and go, okay, well, do we really want to take our arms out and stand up in front of the federal government? Look what happened at the Bundy Ranch.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it could just be a show of force like that. You've got to think like a chess player, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 moves ahead. However, in other parts of the world, the Ukraine, Thailand, for instance, Thailand's a really beautiful example, I think. The protesters over there, they get mad. They burn stuff to the ground. They throw Molotov cocktails. This is not American people sitting around like Occupy getting pepper sprayed by one cop, pepper spraying 50, 60 people. It's sad and ridiculous the way the American people are responding. Now, I'm not advocating violence because that's the last thing that I want to see. I'm just making the observation that you've got protesters over there throwing Molotov cocktails at the police. What happens after so many times? The police lay down their shields and join the protesters, and then real change starts to happen. Same with the Ukraine. Now, of course, Buckingham Palace and Putin and all of them came into the Ukraine and tried to hijack that whole situation, but still, it did result in a genuine revolution. I saw a picture of, I think it was a banker or a politician who was duct taped to a pole, and he was left out there to hang. I mean, not hang like, with a rope, but he was duct taped to a pole out on display for the crimes he committed against the people. So it shows that, sometimes you've got to embrace that darkness and you've got to grab it by the horns and you've just got to go 100%. But that's the state of the world that we're in right now. And we just can't sit back and just keep on putting flowers into guns, because those guns are just going to fire bullets right back at us. And I mean, we've done it for so long. We fought this information war for so long. We've tried to change the consciousness of mankind. Now's the time for action. I mean, it's just we've run out of options.
Wow. Yeah, and you've been right in the thick of it for a very long time. See, I'm not immersed in that arena like you are. You're really involved on a different level to me in this whole scenario here on the planet. And I just find it amazing that, again, like I said earlier, how you hold your integrity all the way through, in the sewers of it all, so to speak. Fighting in that jungle is probably a nicer way of putting it, because the info wars has been... it's been quite intense since the advent of the internet.
Right. It's been all propaganda back and forth. But, we've come to a time now when we have all the information at our fingertips. There is no excuse for ignorance at this time.
I agree with you. And, and some of that information is like, hey, okay, if you look at the dialectic throughout history, there's always been your two major opposing teams, and the structure is there in religion as well. So the same dialectic runs from the spiritual to the recreational. We always got two football teams, two opposing teams against one another, always at it. So you've got supporters on either side. Look at politics. You've always got your red camp and your blue camp. In just about every country, you've got your two main parties. There's always this dialectic going on. But behind the dialectic, we've got the oligarchical, structure. The guys that are the ones who actually do manage both sides of the game. And, I'm getting to the point, me personally, where they create all these drama vortexes, and yes, these drama vortexes are serving a purpose. And I got to the point where I didn't want to any longer play into the drama vortexes that they were creating. And I'm now getting to the point where I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to get to the level where I'm going to actually, the fight that I want to fight personally, and it's up to you guys whether you want to do this, is I want to take on not only the oligarchs, but their overlords.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know what? In our personal life, we really don't have any problems. We just got pulled over, about a week ago,
Yeah.
when we were visiting a friend out of town. The encounter lasted 5 minutes, and it wound up with the cop saying, "Oh, you do the radio show? Oh, you had this person? Oh, wow!" And I was giving them cards, and it was two human beings interacting with each other.
Beautiful.
And so, with our personal level, at least the way that I feel is that I've been able to break through all of the paradigms of the police brutality and all the problems of the world and all of that, because I vibrate at that higher frequency. However, I can't just leave it at that, though. I can't just say, okay, I freed myself. Now I'm good to go. I've got to help everybody else. As long as it's going on, it's a problem, in my opinion. I mean, we've got over here in the United States, police just killed a 93-year-old woman in her house.
What?
93 years old. Yeah, they busted into her house and shot her.
What?
93 years old. Yeah, down in Texas, just last week.
Yeah.
They're shooting people's dogs left and right, busting into people's homes. It's absolutely absurd. As long as this is happening, I've got to be a voice to help people to get out of that as well. And unless everybody wakes up, I mean, we need a good 80-90% of the people to change their consciousness and say, we're not going to take it anymore, and just completely ignore the system and walk away from it and not comply. Then we can have a peaceful revolution of noncompliance. But until the rest of those people start to get it together, the last resort is really the protesters getting out there and really making an impact and making a difference, the way we've seen it happen in Thailand and Ukraine and all of that. That's the last thing I want to see. But, the third dimension only understands third dimensional things, and that's force.
Do you feel that that's the way it's heading with in the US, for example, with the people? Do you feel that there's more of that? I don't feel that angst is the right word. Probably frustration with the system is probably a better way to word it. So you think it's that they're being pushed to the point where people eventually going to just bust out and go, like the LA riots, for example. People were pushed and pushed and pushed to the moment where they just broke. And then there was this massive release of all that pent-up energy.
Well, yes and no. Yes, because I do see people being pushed in that direction for sure. No, because they have people so hopped up on psychopharmaceuticals that they don't feel anymore. And that's a huge problem. And they knew they were going to get to this point. And that's why 30 years ago, they decided they were going to psych test all of the children and put them on psychopharmaceuticals as early as possible. The majority of people walking around the United States are completely numb to everything. They don't understand what's going on. They don't see what's going on. They see police brutality on TV. They see cops shooting dogs. They don't feel it. And that's what we've lost. We've lost the ability to feel what our fellow man is experiencing, what our Mother Earth is experiencing, what the universe is experiencing. It's all one big organism. And when we tap into it, then we feel it. And then we become a part of it. And we don't even become a part of it. Let me take that back. We remember that we are a part of it.
Exactly.
And we've forgotten that we're a part of it. And we've created a world like this. I mean, we're dealing with very, very dark energies here. And unfortunately, the only way to combat them is through darkness.
Yeah. Well, that's one way of looking at it, to combat them through darkness. It's like fighting fire with fire, in a sense.
Right, exactly. And I realize that as a light being, for lack of a better term, where are we going to shine the most? Are we going to shine the most in the light, or are we going to shine the most in the dark?
Exactly,
we're going to shine the most in the dark. Exactly. That's where we're needed. That's why we are where we are. Maybe the timelines did shift, and maybe there's a positive timeline where everything is all hunky-dory. We've chosen to stay here in this negative timeline because the negative timeline is what needs the help.
Yeah, it is. That's why I'm came to the planet, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm embrace the darkness myself, because I knew I needed to understand it, and I needed to, I don't know if I can find the right wording right now, but it's more to do with embracing it means like hugging it. Do you know what I mean? Embracing the darkness doesn't mean becoming evil as the darkness. I think people have this misconception when we actually use that wording, oh, we need to embrace the darkness. I think people have the wrong idea because they're coming from within their own mental framework of their, the filtering what I'm saying through that, through their programs. But embracing the darkness actually means having the capacity to embrace it, to hug it, to understand it. So, and it's figuratively speaking, because we understand the way it functions, its dynamics, its machinations. We understand what drives it, what moves it, what inspires it. And when we really have that depth of understanding of the darkness, and especially our own darkness, we can't embrace the darkness until we first embrace our own darkness. And by me embracing my shadow side, I know exactly where those guys are coming from because I have all those traits inside of me. Everybody has them. So once we get past our self-righteousness and our spiritual egoism and we start embracing our shadow selves, then we get more into a balanced state and we become this, we go back towards being the creator aspect of ourselves, where we remove ourselves from the dichotomy or the dialectic, shall I say, of dark versus light, of positive and negative. And we get this opportunity to be the creator, holding the two energetic charges in balance. So we go back to being in this place of authority over the negative charge and the positive charge. Our vantage point changes.
I completely understand that. The way that I've always looked at it, the term embracing the darkness is diving right into it and facing it head on.
Exactly.
Before I was, all about the love and light. No, I don't even want to look at that kind of stuff. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about ascension. Let's talk about all that.
You go into
all
denial,
stuff
don't you?
Feel good.
Yeah.
But I realize that I have to embrace those negative feelings sometimes. Not negative feelings that I want, like that you want to do negative things to others. Negative feelings that you're feeling. The anguish and the anger and all of that, and you have to embrace it. You have to take hold of it, and then ultimately you can use it like an arrowhead, like the tip, and you can use that tip to fight right back with it. And then you see things start to change, and then you feel so much better about yourself. All these people that gave us all this grief and all of that, when we were all about the love and light, they didn't leave us alone. When I told them to F off, they left us alone. They said, oh my God, Chris Geo's not supposed to talk like that. Hey, you know what? Go fuck yourself. Excuse my language. And you can put that out. I don't know if it's,
No, I'm with you there because this is what we need to understand about our situation on planet Earth. This darkness, which is now posing as light, is going to keep coming, and it's going to keep coming, and it's going to keep coming. And when we start to behave in a more passive way, when we go all love and lighty and everything is beautiful and we live in denial of anything that's negative, this thing just keeps coming at us and finds ways to apprehend our will. This is what it's about. We lose passion, we lose determination, we lose tenacity, we lose will. And with this love and light business, apprehending, pacifying, neutralizing people, there's no longer any fight in anybody. And I guarantee 100% with all my soul and all my heart and all my essence, and I am not saying this lightly, at some stage in the future, if not already, but in the future, anybody who wants to extract themselves from this matrix is going to have to enact the inner warrior. No doubt about it. There is no way out of the situation without an assertive nature, without setting our boundaries. This is another way of wording it. You have to learn how to set your boundaries with that energy because it's going to keep coming at you. It wants to consume you and apprehend you. It wants to it seeks ownership over you. So this is, people want to live in denial of this warrior energy where you've got to make a fight, you've got to make a stand. It's coming, and we're going to have to do it one way or another. Now, each person will enact the inner warrior to varying degrees, because the inner sanctum is the final battleground. If people look into the model that I've presented, where the galaxy is the fractal of the universe, the solar system is a fractal of the galaxy, which is a fractal of the universe. And then you got the Earth, the same again, yet another fractal. The human vessel, yet another fractal. So we had the universal arena, the galactic arena, compressing down again to the solar arena, compressing again to the earthly arena, compressing again to the human vessel arena, and the internal arena is the final battleground. This is where we take everything that we have seen, done, and been, universally speaking, all of our creations, and take it through the eye of the needle. And that is in the mind, because this energy, this God entity of which I speak, is a mind entity. The mind, the area of the mind. So that's why you've been involved in info wars, in the information wars, because it's about information, and knowledge is power. So when we are involved in this battle of the mind, because it's about the apprehension of our awareness and our understanding of life. So it's about information. It's about knowledge, and that is the final battleground. And the inner warrior has to be enacted. And we have to learn how to set our boundaries. And sometimes you do have to say, fuck you, I've had enough. You ain't going to, you will not cross this line any further. Here is where I make my stand. And everybody's going to have to do that with this energy at one stage or another. And the longer you leave it, the harder it's going to be and the more painful it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Jesus said, turn the other cheek, but he said, only do it once. The second time, then you can come back with the sword.
No.
There you go.
He's coming back with the sword.
Yeah, but he
That's
also
exactly
said 70 times 7, you must forgive.
Right. Well, okay, think about this, though. Let's take a look at this on a physical concept here. Gun control.
Yep.
It sounds great. A world without guns. Children don't have access to guns. There won't be any gun violence anymore. Oh, what a good feeling. What a good feeling. However, if they take the guns, then they're the only ones left with the guns, and then tyranny starts to set in as a result. We've seen it in other countries. We're seeing it here in the United States. That's why they're trying to harm.
We would,
right.
That massacre down in Tasmania, that totally stripped everybody of all our guns.
Right.
And it was a total setup. I mean, there's no way that guy who was mentally disturbed can shoot better than not even a crack SAS guy here in Australia, which is our elite forces units. The guys were coming out from those units saying, we can't shoot that good. We don't know what this was all about, but there is no way you could have 22 heart shots, single shot kills, bang, 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 one after the other, and some at great distances. There was something very wrong about that whole setup.
Right, right. But I was listening to somebody from Australia earlier today, and they said, Australia, we're free to go shopping, and that's about it.
There you go.
Is that true? I mean, has the government started clamping down on people's civil liberties since they've disarmed people?
It's I would say it's the most advanced system on the planet because, if you look how the oligarchs went from the European, Europe was the first amalgamation of getting different races, a multicultural system, and merging it under one umbrella. That was the first attempt, the first model. It's called the Roman Empire, okay, as we know it. Then it went over to what we now know as the United States. That was the second attempt at creating a multicultural system that has the power and ability to integrate and merge and, shall I say, assimilate people under one unified umbrella. Australia was the last place that empire came to and started assimilating a multicultural infrastructure under one umbrella. We have the most advanced systems of apathy that exist on this globe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, there's really nothing anybody can do about it if they're not armed on top of that. And so you see how the darkness and the evil, it makes you feel good. Oh, we're going to take away the guns because it's going to stop all these horrible crimes that are going on. The children are going to be safe. And of course, everybody loves that. Everybody wants to keep the children safe. But what is the actual agenda behind it? And that's why we can't fall for all the love and light stuff and all of this crap anymore, because as long as we're sitting there feeling in a really artificially good way. If we're sitting in an artificially happy state, well, we're open to all kinds of deception and manipulation.
Oh yeah, it's all about that love and light and bliss. And I assure people, and I really do say that, I assure you, the programs that are coming to this world, the games and the programs that are going to be implemented upon us very soon in the near future are all about love. It's going to look grim for a little while. First, you got the grim side of things that's going to come. It's going to look a little bit grim because it has to have a more negative connotation to it for the positive side of the charge to have its effect. You see, how is this God entity going to attract people into its heavenly realms, into its pacifying realms of love and bliss and all that sort of nature? Because the reason it has to use that charge to be the custodian type of charge, the facilitating charge needs to be a more positive, loving version of life, is because it needs to override will. You see, it needs to apprehend the will of humanity. So when people actually want to go to its heavenly realms, then it hasn't broken any universal laws.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right? So it's bending the rules. It's about apprehending the will of the person, and it's about spiritual molestation. This is what we're up against.
I know exactly what you mean. During the whole Boston bombing situation here in the United States, people were cheering for the police on the corner, for the big armored tanks, for the curfew at 7:00. They implemented a citywide curfew, and people were cheering for it. They didn't realize that they were just tying the rope around their own neck more and more and more. They were loving it. They felt really good. They were pumped up with all these artificially good feelings that, oh, we're going to get these terrorists and we're going to get these people that committed this, and we all need your cooperation to go to your houses at 7:00 and give up your liberty, et cetera, et cetera. It's also happening the same way on the spiritual plane as well.
Exactly. As above, so below, as you mentioned earlier. Right. And it really is so I'm seeing it all happening on the spiritual plane, and that's where I'm going to war and to battle. It's battle royale is the words I've been using in my communications with people lately. We are at that stage. I don't like it. I don't want to have it. But if you have someone that is imposing upon you, imposing upon your rights, imposing upon your state of being, it's like, I'll give people an example. Where I live can be quite harsh at times. If you have, let's say, a mouse plague, and all of a sudden those mice start invading your home.
You know what's funny is that's exactly what happened to us when we first moved in together. We had a whole mouse invasion, and I was trying to catch them and be nice and and release them outside, but more and more kept coming.
That's right.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah. And it gets to the point where that energy wants to take over. It's only looking to consume. It has no other agenda, no other idea, and there's no empathy involved. There's no compassion for your circumstances involved. It doesn't care. That energy does not care about your circumstances. It needs to feed. And that's what we're up against. We're up against a system that has an agenda, and it does not give two shits about your quality of life, about your rights, about your personal circumstances, about your emotions, about your pains, about whatever. It doesn't care whatsoever about that. It is a system that wants, and this system is a living entity. Everything in the universe is alive with life. Everything, even this mouse I'm holding up right now, that is living consciousness. It is living energy. So everything is alive. So you've got to realize that these systems of control are living entities. Now, anybody who has the sensitivity will feel that. You go up against the system, you can feel the system energetically hits you. It's like a wave of energy that actually hits you. It hits your central nervous system. You get, like a tremble that goes through your body. You can really feel the energy of the system. So it gets to the point where we have to understand the system, because fighting on the street with rifles is one way of going about it, but you're not going to get to the heart of the problem. That's going around putting out a little grass fire, but you're not actually going to rake up the leaves and the dead wood to actually stop the fire from happening in the first place. We need to get right into the heart of the issue. So what I'm saying is now it's time to be Neo. Now we've got to start enacting this aspect of us that has the capacity to deal with the oligarchs, this capacity of us that has this aspect of us that has the capacity to deal with the systems of legal structure. There are people on this planet who are debunking the legal system and where it stands. Part of the course that I'm writing, actually, when the day comes, will enable somebody to stand in the court or stand up to this whole system, because we're going to be standing up to the God entity who is the imposer of this system, of this synthetic construct called LAW law, which has been imposed over the natural order in this world. This is what I'm talking about. We're going to get that sword, and we're going to ram it all the way up to the very top.
Well, let me first of all, illustrate something on the physical to back up what you were just saying. Just recently, a woman's house was taken away from her because she owed $6.12. And her husband had died. She didn't know about this $6.12 notice. It expired. They took away the entire house. Wow. It was a $300,000 house, yeah, and they took it for $6.12. So when you say the system is alive and the system has no empathy, the system has no feelings, no nothing, it just needs to just suck energy like a parasite, you're absolutely right. Now, I understand exactly where you're going with the law stuff, and I've gone down that route, and I fully understand the person, the human being. I understand the straw man account. I understand that all of it is an illusion, admiralty law, et cetera, et cetera. However, I have been able to use that, though, in a lot of situations to ward off potential conflicts. And I don't think it's because of the information itself. I think it's more because the people that I encounter, police officers or judges, they say, you know what, this guy knows way too much. Get him out of here. I've got 1,000 people standing behind who's going to pay me and tell me and thank me for it, too. Yeah. I've seen people in court say thank you when the judge gives them a fine. Thank you? Fuck you. That's my response to these people. Anyways, I'm sorry. That was a little outburst there. However, we have to face the fact, though, George, that we're dealing with criminals with guns.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And we can be right in the law and we can be completely in honor, et cetera, but we're dealing with criminals with guns. Yeah, and guns with a low mentality on top of that. I mean, exactly. The Supreme Court here in the United States just ruled there was a guy who didn't get a job with a police department because his IQ was too high, so they wouldn't hire him. The Supreme Court ruled that is acceptable, that they cannot hire him because his IQ is too high. So we're dealing with people with less than average IQ who have guns. We've got to do something about this because it's getting dangerous now.
Oh man, it's a classic. Yeah.
I gotta see people calling the judge Your Honor. Your Honor? I don't know if this guy's honorable. In my experiences, 9 out of 10 times they're not honorable, so I'm not going to call him Your Honor. Anyways, the whole court system is just completely. Whew, yeah. I'm glad I don't have them anymore because I cut it off at the root of the problem. You know, as soon as I get into any encounter with a police officer, I figured out ways to make it brief and non-intrusive. Exactly. And that's just by staying calm, projecting an energy of authority, but at the same time, one of very calmness as well. You never, ever want to get out of line or let any kind of emotions come up during a police encounter because they're going to respond and reflect whatever emotions you're injecting into the situation.
They're going to hit the ball back, and they're going to hit it harder every time.
Exactly. When you know what you're talking about, then they think twice and they go, oh, wait a minute, we're dealing with somebody who knows a little more than the average person. You get out of my way here. I've got 1,000 other people that I can go mess with.
Yeah. And for me to take the statement that I wanted to, that the point that I wanted to make further is that it's like being sovereign because we're working towards something in this conversation. You know, we're working towards sovereignty as well. And that word gets thrown about a fair bit, you know, and what does being sovereign mean to you, to people, for example? I was asked the other day, what does being sovereign mean to you, George? And I went, well, I think being sovereign to me means a little bit different to most people, you know. being sovereign to me means that I will be completely independent of their system. And when I say their system, I mean not just the system of law, I mean the entire system, and I'm talking cosmically as well, spiritually. I'm talking the whole freaking lot. So what we're talking about is being independent. For me, being sovereign means totally free, back to my complete natural order. The part of me that is in my infinite nature, but also the part of me that is one with this universal creator, the real one. And so not this God entity who's claiming to be the creator of all that is and all that exists, you know, the one suffering from egoic insanity. So for me, what being sovereign means I'm not going to need to actually drive a car. I won't need to go and put fuel in my car to get around. I won't have the need to go and buy food from the supermarket. So I'm not going to be dependent upon their system, because people walking around going, oh, I'm free, I'm sovereign. And they're kind of, it's nice to have that intention, but the reality is you're not completely sovereign, because you're still putting fuel in your car. So you're using their system. You're going and buying food from the supermarket. So we're still relying on their system. We're still engaging in their system. So you're still functioning from a level of dependency upon their system. So you're not sovereign. Okay, we're not.
That's a good point.
You know, really, we're not. So with a lot of people walking around in more of a delusional sort of interpretation of what it means to be sovereign. So for me, I won't need to put fuel in my car and I won't need to fly a plane when I want to come and see you. I will be bilocating. I'm just going to use the law of attraction. Now, that might seem like the world of fantasy to some people, but that's completely normal. Okay, that is normal mode of transport, is to be able to disappear from one location and reappear in another location. Universally speaking, that is natural travel. Totally normal. Nothing
It's funny.
weird about it whatsoever.
It's funny you bring that topic up, because that's something I've been looking into. I haven't talked about it on the show at all, but I've been doing a lot of research into that, and I've been reading accounts of other people who've been able to accomplish that kind of teleportation and bilocation and other forms of travel like that. But you're absolutely right. I never even considered that. The way I've always seen it is, like you said earlier, we have to be like Neo. We have to learn to slip in and out of the matrix. We can use the matrix to our advantage or whenever we need it. If I need to go to the grocery store, I can go buy some organic, vegetables or whatever if I don't have them growing myself. But at the same time, I can live outside of the system. What does it mean to be sovereign? In my opinion, it's autonomy is the best definition for it. Self-governance. Anarchy comes from the Greek, which means without rulers.
Without the archons.
Exactly, without the archons. Yep, exactly. But we've been bred to believe that anarchy is chaos and death and destruction, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe it is in the old paradigm, in the three-dimensional paradigm. But now we've moved forward. And now it's just a matter of everybody catching up to where we are now, getting rid of this old system. Scarcity, for instance. There was you see it in the animal kingdom. I just watched a little video. This cat had a huge bowl of food. 4 mice came up to it and started eating it with the cat. And the cat was sharing the food with the mice.
Wow.
Well, wait, the cat's supposed to eat the mice. Why is it sharing its food? Because there's more than enough to go around, and the cat realizes that. Yes. Same thing with people. If we didn't have this artificial scarcity, I think 99% of crime would just disappear. The other 1%, unfortunately, psychopaths in our society. We're always going to have people that are a little bit off in the mind, and they enjoy doing bad things to people, and we've got to figure out a way to deal with those people. But for the most part, we get rid of artificial scarcity, and that's it. We've got a utopian society without government.
Absolutely. Without governance.
Exactly. Self-governance. See, a friend of mine, he says, do you really want to be without government? I said, yeah, absolutely. He says, well, you need to govern yourself. Ah, yes, exactly. That's key. That is key. I forgot about that.
Exactly. And so when it comes to this thing about sovereign, and when it comes to this thing about law, so let's say in the future, I'm standing in a court of law, for example, and this system of law wants to impose itself upon me. Well, I will already have released myself in that moment from that system of law. I'll be outside of it. So even though that system will want to try and impose itself upon me, I can clearly state that I am no longer under its governance, because I've already ended my agreement with the God entity that is imposing that system of law. See, that's an imposition. You see, this is where I'm getting at. This is the depth and degree, the level that I'm coming from, is you go past everything that you see on this earthly level, you go to the interdimensional off-world overlords, then you go to their overlords and their overlords, and then we go all the way back to this God entity, which is a mind entity. It's neither masculine nor feminine. It's an androgynous mind energy, and it expresses itself in the masculine, which I call King Dick, and in the feminine, which I call Queen Bitch of the universe. So we've got King Dick of the universe and Queen Bitch of the universe. So you've got the father energy and you've got the mother energy, which is an attempt to replicate the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So this is what's going on. And, I'm really a bit crass in this show because you and I, we're a couple of guys, we get together, we just let it all hang out. So this show's got a little different level of expression. And we're going to be authentic and natural here. So yeah, Queen Bitch and King Dick of the universe. And what I'm talking about is being able to say to those involved in the system of law that they want to impose is, well, I'm not under the governance of your system because I'm outside of that. And when someone tries to come and take you away, we will literally have the power to stop them. So even if someone tries to, let's say it'll get to the point where someone's thinking about pulling out a gun and wanting to shoot you, you will know that because of your level of ability and awareness in that moment. And you will be able to communicate to that being. And that will then, they will realize that what they're doing is wrong, and they will put the gun back in the holster and they will not want to fire it at you. You see, this is the level that I'm talking about.
I totally understand that level. I'm concerned that, I don't know, I tend to go down Dolores Cannon's line of thinking, or her theories, that there are some souls that have come from the higher planes in order to help the third dimensional beings and the beings of the earth, and that you and I and a lot of the listeners out there, we are actually of the higher dimensions and we've chosen to come back here. I'm just worried about giving this kind of knowledge to the people that don't quite understand how to wield it, because once they try to wield it and they're not completely wielding it properly, they can wind up getting
they won't have access to it.
No, they can wind up hurting themselves trying, in a situation like this. We had police enter our home just recently. They came into the wrong home, or I don't even know exactly.
To your home?
Yes. I had police in my living room with guns drawn on me.
No way.
I don't know if somebody made a fake 911 call to our house or if they came into the wrong house. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened. But Cherie and I are laying in the bedroom, and we hear Denver police, and we're going, oh, must be upstairs. With the guy upstairs, he's had problems. And she says, I think they're here, because they kept calling it again. I walk into the hallway and I've got two cops standing there with their guns drawn on me. Whoa. My reaction, because of who I am and because of what I know, is to put my hands up and go, whoa, where's your warrant? Back up. And I'm motioning him like this to back up. Now, luckily, they were demanding my hands go up, and my hands did go up. Even though it wasn't I surrender, it was back up. That was my natural instinct. They grabbed me, they put me in the handcuffs 3 minutes later because of who I am, because of the way that I spoke, because I was looking him in the eye. They wound up taking the handcuffs off, apologizing profusely, and then they became our best friends. However, somebody who doesn't quite understand, the calmness that it takes in order to be in a situation like this, they can wind up getting shot in a situation like that.
Yeah, because they get angry and they lose it,
Exactly. I mean, I was furious. You don't understand the violation that I felt by having police in my home with guns drawn on me. This is my sanctuary. This is, if I have domain over anything in this world, it is my home. And that's the way it should be with everybody.
Yep.
In my home, such a violation. But still, I was able to stay calm, collective, and 3 minutes. That's all it was. Handcuffs off. And I'm sorry, sir. Oh, we're so sorry. We're so sorry. Oh, did you hear Snoop Dogg is playing at Red Rocks tomorrow night?
Yeah, right.
That was the thing they said. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. You just walked in my house, put me in handcuffs, arrested me without a warrant. And, because they knew they were in the complete wrong. But other people who don't quite understand how to handle themselves. I guess that's what we need to do, is just really illustrate the point that you have to be very responsible when you're wielding this kind of information.
You do. I totally agree. And the reason I'm sharing it is for people to understand where we're heading towards, what we are capable of eventually. You know, I know I'm not physically, realistically capable of that right now in this moment. I realize that. I'm not living in a fool's paradise. But also we need to know what we are capable of in the future, what we are moving towards ahead of where we are at now. That's important for us to know that. Not to be, you know, we've got to have some sort of foresight into, you know, beyond the current realm of activity and ability and capability we have right now. We need something to move towards. And, you know, that is my understanding of it. When we have that ability, and I'll tell you why I know that, is because when I had a hooded being come into my home and attempt to kill me in my life, I went into that mode automatically. It wasn't me, George, the personality, going into that mode. George was really not present in that moment. But out of my chest area came this light that just surrounded me, out of my chest, right? And I looked at this being, and it was attacking me with an energy to kill me. That's what that energy and the intent was about. And I looked at it while it was zapping me, and I said, it doesn't matter what you do to me, I will always love you. And it got angrier when I said that and intensified its attack. And eventually, after about 20 seconds, which is a really long time when this is going on, it stopped and it walked away because it knew it couldn't defeat me, it couldn't take me out. So this is what I'm talking about. There is a nature inside of us. There is an intention inside of us to be in this world, to be on this planet. And when the time comes, we will enact that capability and that ability. And it would only be done when our egos aren't there getting in the way, because it can't. We currently, with our egos, haven't the capacity to deal with that much power and that much knowledge and that much wisdom.
Well, in my journey, I found that when we first started this, it was all about losing the ego. And then I realized, wait a minute, the ego is our sense of self.
Yes.
The ego is our protector. It keeps us it keeps us safe from harm. You know, it stands up and fights when it needs to.
Yeah.
I had lost that completely, and I now in hindsight I can see why I went through that, and I got stepped all over, and you name it. I mean, you know the crap we've been through. So then I realized we have to lose the ego in order to rebuild it the way that it needs to be, which is in unison with the higher self.
Exactly.
So the ego, I think, it is just as important as the higher self, but they both have to be working together.
Exactly.
If you have a Indian tribe, for instance, Native American or Aborigine or any type of native tribe, and you've got tribal warfare going on, you know, the people can sit around the fire and smoke the peace pipe all day long. If you've got an invading army, you've got to do something about it.
Exactly.
Sitting around smoking the peace pipe isn't going to do anything.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you're not taking the time to smoke the peace fight and you're war, where you're going to go into other villages and become the invading army.
Yeah,
and so
beautifully
that's where
said.
the balance comes in, that you can say, okay, I understand who I am. I understand that I have to fight sometimes, but I'm going to go into the fight with a higher consciousness, and therefore the outcome will not only be in my favor, but what I create after the outcome is something way better than what I've defeated, and therefore I don't become what I've ultimately defeated.
Wow. Okay, so for everybody who just heard that, I recommend rewinding now and listening back over, because they are true words of wisdom. True words of wisdom. Please do that, and you won't be disappointed. Chris, that was amazing.
Thank you. It's the warrior journey that I've realized that we've all had to maintain. And one of the other key elements, I don't know if you've ever spoken with David Whitehead of Truth Warrior.
I've had a discussion with David Whitehead.
Yes.
He's an amazing gentleman.
Yeah. He came on our network. He says, hey, I started the show because I used to listen to Truth Frequency, you know, way back in the day. And, I wanted to do it myself. And he calls his show The Truth Warrior. And I realized that we do have to be the warriors. And so it's funny because I've helped him along his journey at the very beginning when we were doing our show and he was a listener. Without him even knowing it, he helped me significantly with my journey.
Wow.
So David Whitehead on truthfrequencyradio.com, and the show is fantastic.
Fantastic, David. Yeah, and I thoroughly enjoyed my interview with him. He interviewed me, and it was just brilliant. So thanks, David.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a brother in arms there.
It's funny when you start to vibrate and resonate at these higher frequencies, and all of a sudden you find yourself surrounded by these same people.
Law of
And
attraction.
then, yeah, exactly. And then the lower level beings try to come in and suck off your energy, but they just simply can't.
I can't.
Unless allow them to. I realized when I was addressing the lower level beings that were around me at first, and when I was combating them, then that's when I really was going down into that lower frequency. But when I stood up as who I am, as the warrior, and just said, hey, I don't want to use any more foul language, but I just said, hey, leave me alone, get away from me. This is who I am. The energy projected in the same way when I had the police staring at me with guns. I mean, I've got the police with guns. I'm in handcuffs, and I'm looking them dead in the eye and telling them that they need a warrant and they'd have no right doing what they're doing. And that, I don't think they could believe that. Here's some guy with guns in his face in handcuffs telling them what to do. That's the type of power that we can wield with this understanding.
That's wielding the sword.
Yes, exactly. But that's why I'm so afraid of the people not quite fully understanding it and still trying to use it and getting hurt.
Well, it has to. Yeah. It's not just the words. It's not just the plain words on their own. There has to be the emotion, state of emotion, the state of spiritual aptitude, the wisdom that comes through. It's your authentic light that comes through in that moment, because it's your higher beingness that is shining through when you're putting them into practice. Not practice, but you're enacting them. You're really instigating those words in that moment with intent, with purpose. And so all of that is all variables of the equation that come together to create this beautiful presentation or expression and emanation in that moment. So yes, it's a lot more than just the words on their own.
Yes. It is definitely what radiates from the inside. This all started from the inside, and that's what the whole journey, at least in my case, was about forging who I am on the inside and then projecting it outwards. And I had to go through the negative. I had to go through the trials and tribulations. I had to go through the love and light. I had to go through it all to become a fully balanced being. And
okay, we will take a break here, and that is the end of part 1 of episode 27 with Chris and Sheree Geo from the Truth Frequency Radio Network. So stay with us as we continue this most intriguing and informative discussion when we return from a short break. We are submersed in a construct that was designed to break us and keep us broken, but it hasn't. It failed. We still go on because we were designed from an eternal template of infinite creativity and not a synthetic house of cards built on pride and false power. Breaking free from the programs and paradigms that hold us down takes courage, endurance, tenacity, and trust. The reason it is so hard is because to be a free and sovereign being, we have to smash every lie, even if it hurts. It is good to be reminded of how resilient, unbreakable, magnificent, and powerful we truly are. And if anything provides a foundation for that, it is the book, Our Universal Journey. Go to ouruniversaljourney.com.au. The views and opinions expressed by guests on Superwoo Radio are not necessarily the views and opinions held by me, the host George Cavassalis, and Superwoo Radio. In today's world, it is crucial to exercise discernment, but it is also just as important to seek common ground and share in the perspectives that unite us. Music for this episode is brought to you by Medwin Goodall. The album Tears of the Dragon, and is available at medwingoodall.net. Welcome back as we continue now with part 2 of episode number 27, here with Chris and Sheree Geo from the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Yes. It is definitely what radiates from the inside. This all started from the inside. And that's what the whole journey, at least in my case, was about forging who I am on the inside and then projecting it outwards. And I had to go through the negative. I had to go through the trials and tribulations. I had to go through the love and light. I had to go through it all to become a fully balanced being. And maybe I am a little bit polarized right now towards the aggressive side. Maybe I need to pull myself back in. It's a constant struggle to try to balance. And that's, I think, is very important, is to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and find the flaws within yourself, because when you start to believe that you have the balance is when you've lost it. Yeah,
you get kind of like in fool's paradise. No, because we're continually expressing ourselves. We're holding both charges constantly, and we're enacting both charges constantly to varying degrees. One's more, one's less, one's stronger, one's lighter. It's like depending on the current situation. So it's a case-by-case basis. And so here we have the situation on the planet where we're in this quiet lull at the moment, and we have a situation where we need to start activating our inner warrior, which is what you and I have been discussing. The inner warrior. That's really what we're getting at, that ability to stand in your integrity and stand true and express what you need to express in any given moment, because this energy is just going to keep coming. It's going to be relentless, and it ain't going to stop until we literally transcend its domains. And that means ending the trance of its domains as well. So once we can do that, that's when we can start saying, hey, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting sovereign here. I'm starting to feel like I'm becoming autonomous and independent. And when the day comes that we're bilocating, and the day comes that we have the ability to move mountains, so to speak, literally, because we could, even though we wouldn't do it, just because you can doesn't mean you do it. That's when we know that we are going to be autonomous and sovereign and independent. So I say, with what's coming in the world, how do you see, because I'd really love to ask you this question, how do you see the events playing out in the near future? Now, not in a predictive, prophetic sort of way, but just in your assessment with the way, because you're so integrated into the happenings of the world right now. So how do you see it playing out in the future?
Before I answer that, let me just give one more example to the audience. When I was doing martial arts growing up, the sensei used to make me do knuckle push-ups, and he would make me do them for like 30 minutes every single day. And if our backs weren't completely straight, he would take the bamboo stick and he would just hit us on the back as hard as he can. And that kept us straight and doing the knuckle push-ups. I mean, it was relentless. I was able to break 2-inch boards at 10 years old with my fists.
Wow.
I never made the connection until later that the reason the knuckle push-ups were there, the reason that it hurt so badly, was so I can achieve that kind of power in the tournaments and in the tests, so I could break the 2-inch boards. And that's what was toning up the knuckles. Yep. So when we go through all these trials and tribulations in our life, it's really forging us to become the warriors later on down the line, if not now at this point, or whatever point people are in the journey. Where do I see this world in the next 10 years? It's really up in the air right now, and it all depends on every human being out there. We can project what's inside of us outwards, and our own personal reality can change to an extent. Like I said, I really have no problems with police. If I do have a police encounter, which for some reason, it seems like over the last couple months, I have been encountering them a little bit more, but the encounters are still brief, non-intrusive, even in the most extreme circumstances, like having guns in my face. I'm still able to push it all off. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just say that, these encounters you're having, I feel are really fantastic because they're setting you up in the future for the system to say, hey, we've encountered this guy on numerous occasions. We don't think there's, what people say or accuse this guy of. We don't think, well, we know that he's not what they're saying he is. So we're not going to bother him anymore because he's actually the real thing. So you're a genuine person is what I'm trying to say.
I wonder if my name is flagged in the system, because I've had some really strange encounters. No driver's license, no insurance, no car registration, nothing like that. Oh, I'm sorry to bother you, sir. Have a great day. And I'm going, well, that was very strange. Most people will go to jail under those circumstances, but for some reason, I don't know. It makes me wonder if my name is possibly flagged or something.
Now I can edit that little admission out if you want.
No, that's fine. I got the driver's license reinstalled. Reinstated. What happened is that back in 2008, I got pulled over. They had given me a ticket for driving while license invalid. Well, my license was legitimately valid at the time. Wow. And so I went to court and I gave him my driving record, and I said, I've never had any reason for my license to be invalidated. I called DPS. DPS said, no, this was just a computer error, etc. The court said, this isn't sufficient evidence. I said, this isn't sufficient evidence? Well, what exactly do you want from me? And so I wound up not going to court because they wouldn't take any of my evidence. And then afterwards, they did find me guilty of it because I didn't show up. And then my license was legitimately suspended, like legitimately. 4 years later, I fought this for 4 years. I was calling attorneys. Wow. Attorneys were saying, this is impossible. Just pay it. Just pay it. No, I'm not going to just pay it. This is bullshit. Excuse my language, but this is ridiculous. I'm being charged for something that I'm not guilty of. 4 years later, I was able to get it overturned. It was a miracle. I don't know how I was able to do this, but yeah, so everything is back in order now. But there was a time for 4 years that it wasn't. But anyways, I'm kind of veering off the point. The point is, where do I see the world in 10 years from now? It depends on people. Do people want to wake up? Do people want to take the responsibility? Do they want to see the world for what it is? Or do they want to continue to live in this little dreamland that's continuing to get worse and worse and worse? I mean, we're being pushed into prison cities. Gasoline is going up and up and up. And the reason for that is because they don't want people to travel. The airfare is getting absolutely ridiculous. Yep. We just took a trip. They wanted $25 per bag. They wanted, what were the other charges? There were, a bunch of charges.
Book your seat they charge you for now as well.
Yeah. All these charges, wound up being ridiculous just to fly, a couple of 100 miles away. They're doing this on purpose because they want people to stay in their little bubble and not go anywhere and worry about, their job, and that's it. Do people want to realize that we are one humanity? The way I see it, we're like, God is like the computer screen. And each one of us is a pixel on this computer screen, and we make up God. And therefore, we are created in God's image because we're each one pixel in this. And as long as we're fighting with each other, and as long as we're trying to outshine each other and take over the other pixels and all of this, it's never going to wind up in anything positive. But if we just realize that we are all this one being, and we're all one organism, and we realize ultimately that we are God. Not we're God in the sense that we're the creators of all and that we rule over everybody. We're God of our own universe. We're God of our own reality. Nobody has authority over us. Nobody can tell us, that we have to pay a certain tax or that we have to do a certain thing or any of that. And if we all just voluntarily just stop complying in the system, then it's all going to go away. If that doesn't happen, then unfortunately, the few of us are going to have to stand up and fight for the rest of them and say, okay, guys, you got to get your stuff together. Since you're not getting it together, we've got to do whatever we need to do in order to just get rid of all of this negativity in this world, because it's terrible. They want to do World War III. They want to bring in the staged alien invasion. They want to keep us completely disconnected from every other being in the universe. They want to make us believe that we're this tiny little weak, pathetic, helpless little thing, that we need government to feed us, that we need government to clothe us, that we need religion to absolve us of the sin of being alive. I mean, oh my God, we're born, and that's the biggest sin in the world, and we're wretches, and we're these tiny little weak little things. We have to realize that we hold the power to the universe. We are the universe. We are all part of it. And if more and more people will just realize that and take the responsibility, then I see the world in a much better place than if we continue to pop pharmaceuticals, numb ourselves from everything, continue to fall into the programs of growing up, going to school, going to college, getting a good job, working that job until you're 70, and then dying. That's not a good program. That's
a mouse on a wheel.
It's a slave program.
Yes.
It really is. And, this fashion and this hip hop music and all the music of today and the movies and all of this make you believe you have to have the biggest car and you have to have gold jewelry and all of this. It's all slave programming to keep you going to your job in order to pay for crap that you don't need. We get these cars that we don't even pay for. I saw something like this. Somebody wrote something like this on Facebook. We go to these jobs to pay for the cars, to pay for the clothes that we buy to go to these jobs, to pay for this house that we leave vacant all day. It's ridiculous. It's all slavery. We just have to realize that we've been deceived. We have
been deceived greatly. Yeah, brilliantly said. I wanted to ask Cherie. Is Cherie still with us there?
I am.
Oh, Cherie, you have done the most amazing job there in facilitating, holding the space for this great man to speak. I want to acknowledge you for that, the divine feminine.
Well, they say behind every good man, there's a great woman.
Yeah,
so
there certainly is, isn't there?
I'm here.
Well,
I'm always here for him.
Well, Cherie, what do you have to say in regards to as a voice of the divine feminine in all of this? Because you're right in there with the thick of it, standing beside your great man there, and how do you see things going?
Well,
from a woman's point of view. From a woman's point of view.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one because on the one hand, I do see how it has gotten better for the divine feminine to kind of break through for the past 30 or 40 years, and how it's become not as it doesn't screw with people as much for women to let themselves go and be themselves and explore that side of themselves. On the other hand, however, I think that it kind of lulls us to sleep as women when we see all these wonderful things happening, because it kind of makes us forget about the TSA sticking their hands down our children's pants, and it kind of makes us forget about how Californians have to pay for every mile that they're driving now. We forget about these things because we want to think of the positive. We want to focus on just the positive, and we have to really kind of weigh out the positive and the negative and fight against the negative, even though it has nothing to do with us. If when they pulled their guns on Chris, it was all I could do to not jump in front of him. And, I would take a bullet for him any day of the week, just as he would me. But women need to think about these kinds of things as if they're a bad thing, not just a part of life. Because although we have been persecuted very badly throughout history just for being women, it isn't fair for our counterpart, the divine male, to experience the same thing.
Yeah,
so we need to remember that, we were once at that point where we were getting persecuted just for being female. And now it's kind of turning into a situation where if you're a male, then you are ostracized if you stand up for what you believe in, and you are ostracized and persecuted for coming out and saying, you know what, I don't agree with this being taught in my child's school. And it's become almost acceptable for men to be bashed just repeatedly over and over again in our media, in our TV shows, in film. And we need to stop allowing that to happen to our counterpart. I mean, the counterpart is supposed to be your mirror image, except, you know, I would be the divine feminine, he would be the divine masculine, but letting him and the divine masculine be persecuted is no better than him letting the divine feminine being persecuted.
Wow.
That's very well. You know, I've always seen it like
Wow.
it's the man's role to protect the woman under any circumstances. We are the shield. We are the ones that throw ourselves in front of any danger, in front of any of that, in order to protect our families around us. So, you know, I'm honored to take a role like that, to where I put myself in front at any single time. And I think men need to go back to understanding that as well, that
I agree.
we have to stand up and we do have to speak out and not be afraid of ridicule and all of this. One of the things I've been looking at recently is the Holocaust. And I read a quote from some Jewish politician that says something to the effect of, we have to create a society to where anybody who questions the Holocaust is ridiculed and turned into a pariah. Now, that same type of logic, or the same type of plan, I guess, which has been put over people in countries in Europe and all over, where you can actually go to jail for even questioning the validity of the Holocaust, is being used in other ways now to ridicule just about any free thought and anything that people think. The whole 9/11 thing, if you question 9/11, you're a truther, and you're one of those crazy conspiracy theorists. And you know, if you stand up and question some of the content that they're teaching our kids, like this situation that just happened where this man was arrested because he went to a PTA meeting and was asking why their 9th grade required reading material is pornographic, you're ridiculed by the rest of the room, and then you're let out by police and arrested while everybody else cheers.
Right. And if you don't, and then on the other hand, if you don't vaccinate your child, you're a child abuser.
Right.
Right.
And these are all it's the same methods and control systems that made people just go, you know what, it's not worth my time. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to stand up. I don't want to even talk about it. I'm just going to go along to get along. And it's really a shame. So when you ask the question, where's the world going to be in 10 years? It's really up to the people. I can't even begin to answer that question, because we are really at a crossroad right now. And we're being tested as a humanity, and we're being tested as a species, and we're being tested as a spiritual being. And we've got all the information at our fingertips. And this is what breaks my heart the most, George, is that we've got all the information at our fingertips, and we still choose ignorance. As a society, we still choose ignorance. And I think the controllers, the darkies, whatever you want to call them, the dark energies, they have a code, and they're testing us right now. Can we have all this information right at our fingertips and have perfect access to this and still walk down the path of destruction? And unfortunately, from what I'm seeing, yes, that is the case. However, as time progresses, more and more people are realizing the deception, and I have hope for humanity.
Yeah, because I see it. I see it as what you just said. I see that, and I agree that is taking place, and that is disconcerting for many, for me personally, and for everybody who's listening. It is, and I see the a sword has two edges. So I'm going to talk about the other edge of the sword now, where I feel that there's this test going on for the human being and human beingness and human awareness and the human spirit and the soul of humanity. Because here we are with absolutely everything being thrown at us, absolutely everything, the worst of the worst. I've had it in my life, you've had it in your life. I've been raped, I've been tortured, I've been abducted, I've been taken underground bases. I've had horrendous things done to me in this life. Yet here I am, here I stand. I might get knocked down, but I get up again. And I'm going to keep coming. And I ain't going to stop, because I know it's know thyself. It's that saying, know thyself. And I can tell you, I'm like an unstoppable tsunami. They have knocked me back, and they have knocked me down. but they haven't taken me out. And they're not going to take me out because I have an intention of existing in this world, and I have a relationship with this planet, and I have a purpose for being here. And that is the same for anybody who knows that about themselves. If you are unaware of that nature of self, then you fall into the category, or you allow yourself to be vulnerable to the other systems or the gameplay. It's like when you function in this world from that place of knowing, the way you move through this reality changes. Your interaction with this reality changes. Like Neo, when Neo all of a sudden became aware of self and the power of self, all of a sudden the Matrix did not have that power over him any longer. And this is what's happening here. We have the system that's throwing everything, trying its hardest to diminish the human spirit, to diminish the human being. It's got the programs available and the resources available to it on a universal scale. Everything, every program that's ever been tried on any planetary system, on any race, the best programs available to it, it is implementing here on planet Earth against the human race because of who and what we are. And it is battle royale, which is happening in this world right now. And here we are still, through all this darkness, we stand true in our integrity, in our light, and it comes shining through. And it's a little bit like, the compression of coal, peat and coal, and then eventually through all that pressure and all that compression and density comes out a diamond. And I really truly feel from a bigger picture, that's what the essence of what this reality and what's happening here is all about. And yes, it's going to look grim because we're going to go into more maximum compression. And it's because, those of us who are walking down the path before others, we've gone through this on a personal level. Other people are blissing out in the Matrix, doing their job, loving the high life, having their parties, going to their restaurants, doing all this stuff because they're not tending to their spiritual reality. Okay, so we have decided to do the truth-seeking thing. We've been the truth seeker. We've been on the path, and we have gone through great adversity because we're extracting ourselves out of the clutches of the Matrix and all the deception. Now, they're yet to do it. So what I'm seeing is the globe is going to do it as a whole. So we're doing it individually first, then you've got the planet that's going to do it collectively, the remainder of the people. Not all people are going to end up waking up. I'm a realist. I'm not just an idealist, right? So we are also positioning ourselves, though, because we are the background managers of this reality. This is what I've come to realize. This is what I've come to know, that when the rest of the human race goes through it collectively, we have positioned ourselves to be mentors and guiders and also managers of the situation. And we won't be as we are now. If you think of how much you've grown in the last 12 months, in the last 2 years and last 3 years, and we're on this exponential J curve. So the acceleration of growth is increasing. In 6 months' time, you will have grown as you did in the last 10 years. See? And so we are metamorphosizing. We are transcending and transforming into something completely different constantly. Now, that's going to continue for us. And so there's this like severing taking place. There are those of us who are going through this growth, this path of growth, and those that are going deeper into the trance. And as that group goes deeper in the trance, you get the people that are peeling out of it. And they're going through a very painful process because we went through a long endured painful process. Theirs is going to be more intense and shorter. See, as they peel out, as this thing goes plunging into this dark sort of future reality.
It's a very confusing process as well, because when I was going through it, I did not understand what was going on. It was polarized energies to the right, to the left, up and down, left and right. In hindsight, now I can look back and go, oh, I see the purpose of all of this. But I think a lot of people will be confused when they start to see this coming through. The mentor and background manager aspect of it, I never really thought about that. Although now that I look at what's been going on lately, I've noticed more and more people coming to me asking me for advice, asking me for this and that, and I'm going, What do I know? I'm some guy with a microphone. I
Oh,
don't know.
no, you do know.
Words that I give them seem to be coming from somewhere else. And so you're right. I think we have positioned ourselves in that situation. Now, I think what's important for people in our role to understand is that, like Dolores Cannon says, we're here from a higher dimension to help the lower level beings. Ultimately, it is their choice whether they want to ascend or stay in the third dimension. If they want to stay in the third dimension, that's fine. We have to disconnect ourselves from the emotion involved in it. We can't get discouraged when we see the world getting worse and worse and worse, because people will get better. But even if we're not successful, even if we're only shining the light to point people to the lifeboats and we can't save the entire boat, still, we're still doing what we're supposed to be doing here. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And with the circumstances too that will play out in the world, like think of how big a trigger 9/11 was for people. That was quite a major trigger. And this is what's happening. We're in this process of slow burn. There's this really tight control at the moment to make sure that there's no major events, because the moment there's an event, it sparks, you see, it triggers, it snaps people out of this matrix trance. Our consciousness at the moment, which is our cosmic mind energy and our spirit and our soul, you know, it is those aspects of our being are really coming forth. You know, it's like it's just the membrane is getting thinner. And so it's a very, looking at it from the perspective of the controllers, it's a very, very volatile situation. So they need to dampen things down. They need to keep things calm at the moment, because anything that gets implemented globally has to be, and I mean has to be, part of the greater plan. Because if a faction or a group, even, you know, on a geopolitical level, let's say there's some group in America that wants to go bomb some other group for whatever reasons or agendas they have, they're going to be stopped from doing it, because the big boys and the big girls at the top saying, no way. I'm talking interdimensional and extraterrestrial rulers now. They're going to say, you ain't going to do that, because you're going to stuff up our plans for the human race. You see, because we're coming to harvest time in the near future on this planet, because eventually we're moving to a vibration and a frequency which will put us out of their reach. So while they still have access to us, they have to create an escape route to extract the human race out. And you know, I'm going to use an analogy here which is really crass and really harsh, but I'm going to make it because, like you said, every now and then you've got to make a stand and you've got to call things out for exactly what they are. So here you have this beautiful mother planet, and she's about to give birth. Now, what's going on with this God entity that's coming here, who is molesting the spirit of the human race and wants to extract or farm, or shall I say harvest, as many of the human race as possible so they can continue to worship it and nourish it and feed it and empower it. Okay, this is why this is all happening. And so it'd be like a mother in this reality giving birth, and just as she's starting the birthing process, or shall I say she's pretty much in the middle of the birthing process, along comes somebody, cuts open the belly, like I said, this is really harsh and crass, and rips the child out of the mother and takes it away and claims it as its own. That is what we're up against. And that is harsh and crass, but that's the reality of the energy that we're up against. This entity does not care about the planet, does not care about the human race. It has its own agenda. It needs nourishment from the energy, from the intention, and shall I say, the adoration and the admiration and the love of the human race. It needs it. It can't survive without it. That's why it uses love against humanity. And what's coming in this world after this sort of like grim period that we're moving into now of transhumanism and what have you, we're going to get through that AI phase, which is a part of its overall agenda. It's sent that thing here first, because I'll explain where that comes from. We then have the situation of this imposition of love and light material and ideals and spiritual concepts, which are all designed to apprehend the will of the human, so they can actually love and adore this being and all its deific figures that it has presented to the world, and eventually lure people into its so-called heavenly realms.
I'd like to comment on technology because I love technology. However, I feel that technology is a trap which is keeping us from realizing our fourth dimensional and fifth dimensional potentials. We have Skype instead of telepathy. We should have telepathy. We're developing bullet trains that can go from here to the other side of the United States in an hour instead of developing our bilocation skills. So it's being replaced. Our natural abilities are being replaced to give us a false sense of evolution and a false sense of ascension, while at the same time keeping us completely trapped in this, as you said, artificial intelligence reality. So, you know, for the time being, I'm very glad that we have Skype. I'm very glad that we have the internet. I'm very glad that we're able to get these messages out. But people should realize that ultimately we have the power to access the Akashic records at any given time. We don't need Google to do that. We can we can have telepathy. We can speak to each other. We don't need Skype. We don't need any of these technologies. But while we have them, let's utilize them to the best of our potentials.
Yeah, I agree. It also gives us a reminder of what we're capable of as well. So as long as, you know, I've changed the dynamic of my relationship with the technology. I used to have resentment towards it because it was doing exactly what you just said. I used to think only that. And I fell into that trap of thinking only that. And it disempowers us. It atrophies our natural abilities because it's replacing them. And then at the same time, it's, you know, we could get reminded of what we're capable of, which is what I agree with you on. I mean, you just said that yourself. We change the dynamic of our relationship with this technology, which then enables us to really start exploring, hang on, you know, why can't I talk with Chris on the other side of the world? I should be able to do that. I get, by talking to you on Skype, I get this wonderful feel of where you're at, more hone in on your location. You know, it helps with the telepathy. It helps with the connection from one soul level to another. It's like we have family and friends, and it's like you were telling me about this beautiful little girl that you were in contact with the other day, and
friends.
And straight away I felt it was a being that you are familiar with. So how did I know that? You know, and that's a connection. All of a sudden, you introduced me to her on this world, on this level, but energetically, I had that connection with her and with you and your heart and your soul and the relationship between the two of you. And I was able to understand the both of you. And the dynamic of your relationship, that you are familiar with one another. You know each other from Sirius, for example, and it's a relative from Sirius that has come in and joined you here on this plane. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
She is part of our soul family. I really believe that. And looking into her eyes, it was the most incredible thing because, well, let me start by saying this. She was sleeping in her carrier down by my feet, and she was having bad dreams and kicking. And I was just looking at her and going, she's got to be dreaming about her past lives. I mean, what else are babies going to dream about? Running out of milk? You know, I mean, that's bad dreams that they could have. It must be past lives. And then I looked at this little creature, and I'm you know, all the stuff that she's going to see even after we're gone. This is the generation that we're passing the baton over to, and just seeing this little ball of life and a little bitty soul. Well, there's a soul just like me in a little bitty body. It just all of a sudden the whole future just opened up, and if the future is as bright as her little eyes were, then we're really going to have, you know, be able to make an impact and have a really bright future. If not, she's going to have a mess to clean up. Hopefully, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that generation it has the most advantages as possible.
Yeah, I know. We're here to make an impact. I incarnated for a reason, and this work that we're doing, that's just the beginning.
Yeah, it is. It really is. But like I said, we can be the lights that shine and show people, but we can only show them. We can't make them walk through the door. And if they don't walk through the door, we can't take it personally. We can't let it be heavy on our hearts.
That's right.
We can't let it heavy on our soul. We have to just say, this is what we're doing. We just have to be. We have to continue to do what we're doing, regardless of the circumstances or consequences or outcomes or anything like that. That's what I've realized. And that's what keeps me going, because there are times when I'm talking to people and they're just completely oblivious in a whole nother world, and other times when people are just completely absorbing everything. I found that through the journey, though, as the time progresses here in 2014, more and more people are more receptive than dismissive. So I do see the balance turning, but I know there's a lot of people out there who are in similar roles as you and I, and that's who I'm really speaking to right now, is that we have to just continue to do regardless of the outcomes. And we have to take the good with the bad. We have to take the dismissive people with the people who are receptive, etc. And as long as we're doing it, we've done what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, we just got to keep on going and living from our authentic soul expression.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're gone.
And then in 30, 40 years from now, I can get the hell out of this planet and go back home and never look back.
Yeah, no, I feel this planet's going to be vastly different by the time that happens. I had a wonderful, I've had several visions of this throughout my life. Really powerful stuff, like I was there doing it. And that's when we were talking to large crowds of people, like large crowds, thousands of people. And people like you and I and others, like lots of people, we'll be doing this in the future, because we will be bypassing the need for artificial intelligence. And we were in a room. We were also involved in very important high level meetings as well. So here we are, let's say, with a group of spiritual leaders, for example, was one of the visions that I had. And they were one from every single culture, and they really wanted to understand. They were genuinely wanting to understand where we're coming from with our spiritual ideals, because they're used to the religious constructs. And our spiritual ideals seem to be, there's elements of each of the religious constructs in them, but they seem to be in a place of their own, apart from your standard religious constructs. And they were there with every single nationality, and they all spoke their own native tongues. And we were there, and with one expression, we spoke every single language simultaneously. And I feel that is the true meaning of being able to speak in tongues. I feel that is the true meaning of that, when you speak from your soul, that you have the ability to communicate to the many simultaneously at the same time, without any qualms whatsoever. So each person hears it in their own native language and understands it intimately.
Wow. Amazing. I have noticed that before. We have a lot of listeners in Croatia and several other places that are typically non-speaking and non-English speaking countries. And they write us emails and it's completely broken English, but they still listen to the show. They still listen to all the guests, and they're still receptive to the information. It's very strange. I can't even begin to explain it.
I've had my book translated in Latvian. Can you believe it? Of all places, the first translation of my book was Latvian, in Latvia, and I've sold more books in Latvia than I have in Australia.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
It goes to show, from talking to people from all around the world, I was doing some IT work with a guy in Macedonia, and Macedonia, was it
Macedonia?
No, not Macedonia. I don't remember exactly where he was from, but I've got him on my Skype. I should know. Anyways, he was talking about, we started talking about the government, and he was afraid to speak out about the government. And what was it? Maybe it was Macedonia. Anyways, no. It was somebody who had a big conflict with Greeks.
Turkish.
No, he wasn't Turkish. That was, I would have recognized that right off the back. But anyways, he was from a country that had, a lot of conflicts with Greeks. Yeah. And I told him that I was Greek, and he's like, "Oh my God, we're not supposed to be talking." And I'm going like, "What are you talking about?" And so, he had a lot of problems with his government. He was afraid to speak out because they were just like grabbing people and arresting people. And I was telling him about how horrible it is here. And I was asking him, so what do you think about all these wars and all this? And he's like, oh, it's ridiculous. And I said, exactly. It's all this old world, hate between the countries, wars and all of this division and all of this. It's bullshit. Most people around the world, they get up, they go have a coffee, they go to work, they spend time with their wife, and that's it. Nobody wants all the division and the religious extremism and everything that's dividing us in the world. Most people are just regular people. All of these illusions that have divided us, that's all it is. It's just an illusion. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, other people's ideals of how they want us to see the world, and they want to impose their ideals of conflict onto the general populace. It's really sad.
Right. Exactly. So, I speak to people in India as well, and same thing. They just hang out and just go have coffee and do IT work. And I have to say, though, those are some very intelligent people. I mean, the people in India have blown my mind with some of the stuff that they know. And I mean, I work with kids that are like 20, 21 years old. They're half my age. Wow. And they know 10 times more than me. Yeah. I think it's the education system as well. The Western education purposefully makes people dumb down while their education is boosting them up. And so we've got kids here that are 20 years old who don't even know how to tie their shoes, much less spell properly. I mean, you see it on the internet, the way that they write. It's ridiculous, while other parts of the world are excelling. Yeah,
I agree.
Off on a little bit of a tangent there.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So okay. I would like to discuss the Vatican just briefly, because I feel that that seems to be, we have our corporate infrastructure, which seems to be the dominating network or framework at the moment, which, ties in with money. And the economic collectives that we're experiencing seem to be the measure of our activities, our daily activity. Money's tied with our activity because we get paid for what we do. So there's this control system through the economic collective, and then that ties in behind the corporate infrastructure. There is actually another, you've got your oligarchical and all that, but there's this conglomerate, interwoven sort of network in behind, which also ties into the Vatican. You see, with the language that's coming out of the Vatican is there's a preparation for an introduction to their space brothers. Now, there's a bit of a dichotomy going on here, because in the truth-seeking world, or the conspiratorial genre, there's talk of a fake alien invasion. And then we've got the Vatican that continues to pump out, and the Jesuits and everybody, they're getting ready to introduce us to our space brothers.
Right.
So to me, it's a conflict. It doesn't match.
I do agree. And I would say that if you go back to the roots of pretty much every religion, it comes down to extraterrestrial and sun worship. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's as blunt as I can put it. The Vatican understands that it's either extraterrestrial or interdimensional, but these are beings that the Vatican has been worshiping. I think that what's going on is we have this quote unquote staged alien invasion because there's a different force that's coming back first, and we want to make them look like the bad guys, the ones that are actually the good guys. And so we're either going to stage an alien invasion, or maybe it'll even be a real alien invasion, but not really an invasion, but good entities which are coming, and we want to point the finger and say, those are the bad ones, attack those, et cetera, and have people prepared for that. You're right, there is a conflict there, and I'm not sure which way to go, but I do know that there are physical government documents, patents that say Project Bluebeam, which is to project religious figures and other kinds of figures like that in the sky. The chemtrails also, barium and aluminum in the sky creates the perfect curtain in order to project holographic images through satellites. So the technology's there. Will they utilize it? I don't know. The other conflict that I come into is that why would you spend billions and billions of dollars creating this project and then declassify it and throw all the information on the internet? What's the purpose of that? So, that's another way to look at this. So it is a very confusing thing. But then I go back to Carol Rosen again, who said first it was going to be the Russians, then it was going to be rogue nations, then it was going to be terrorists, and then it was going to be asteroids, and then it's going to be an alien invasion. Well, she got 4 out of 5 right.
Yeah.
You know, it's reasonable to believe that the 5th one is on the agenda too. So it's a very confusing topic for sure.
It is. It's very exciting. You know, I said from the very beginning when I first started putting myself out there, it's going to be exciting when it all starts to happen. So make sure you've got a good stash of popcorn in your cupboard, because
Yes. Yes.
just sit back and watch it like it's some sort of amazing movie that's playing out in the 3D arena, because part of me will know what level to get involved in personally. So there's a level that I'm going to want to get involved in. There's a level that you'll want to get involved in, and your level of involvement will differ from my level of involvement. And so, you know, for everybody who's listening to all this, I say, yeah, get the popcorn out and really exercise a level of detachment as well. Because if you get sucked into the drama vortexes that they want to create, that's just they're designed to suck your energy. Now, for some people, it's in their path and in their journey to get involved in those drama vortexes, whatever they may be. And to what degree you invest yourself into, that's an individual thing as well. All in all, having said all that, at the same time, keep that awareness of, are you just getting sucked in, or is it your path to get involved on that level? That is something you'll need to discern for yourselves. But when we can approach with all the dramas that will play out, because again, even back in 2009, when I came out with my lecture of Our Journey in the Grand Deception, really, I said it then, you know, when that first big domino falls in the public domain, then it's hang on for the ride, because that first big domino, it's going to, you know, be the beginning of all the rest of the dominoes that fall. So when that happens, I don't know when that's going to happen. We all expected it to have already happened. It seems like we're in the slow burn situation. Our consciousness is so volatile right now that they've got to be careful with everything that actually happens in. That's why we're seeing the same old, you know, these tactics, these little implementations of mind control experiments of things like Sandy Hook, for example. You know, I'm really, I don't think that actually took place personally.
No,
That was
absolutely.
staged. You know, I'm all the way over here in Australia, and when I feel into that energetically, and I've heard a little bit of commentary about it, I just something strange about all of that. I just don't feel the energetic charge of grief on an authentic level when I connect to that incident. It's not there. It's like I had a friend show me a video on his screen. And it was a helicopter chasing a UFO, an army helicopter chasing a UFO. And it was quite an intense chase. It was brilliant, you know. And I turned to him and I said, there's no life force in that UFO. Now, the chopper was doing all these incredible maneuvers, but there was I said, there's life force in the chopper, but there's no life force in that UFO. To me, this is a made-up video. And his jaw dropped, because you couldn't tell technically looking at it. You couldn't tell. It was so well done.
That the UFO's flying around the ocean and then it lands right in the ocean. Oh, I saw one like that looked astonishing, and I looked at it and I said, "This is amazing." But you're right. I felt that same energy. Like there's no energy there. And then the guy turns a couple weeks later. He says, "No, that was fake. We just put it out there just as a hoax."
Yeah, well, there you go. And see, when we function on this level, and an event like Sandy Hook takes place, and you feel into it. Where is the level of grief? The charge should be in the ether of the planet. You see, we should be able to connect to the charge of grief that comes from, and the pain from the children dying and all that sort of business. Now, the children died. There's children that died. How they died, I don't know. But the level of grief from the parents and the grief from the incident occurring, that's crap. That didn't happen. That there's right. No charge of energy there. So that was a staged event. There's going to be more of those sorts of things that are going to happen. So we have the ability to discern if we know how to feel into what sort of levels of charge of energies as well.
Let me ask you something on the UFO subject. I've noticed over the past couple of years that UFO activity has significantly decreased.
Yes.
Maybe it's just that I'm not seeing it as much anymore, or seeing videos, but it seems like whatever has happened, they've came and gone, and there's a big quiet space now. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, I have. And the level of UFO activity is because there's a lot more people with mobile phones and everything. There's just too much ability for the general public to capture them on video. So the order's been given to the breakaway civilization, the shadow government and the breakaway civilization, the military industrial complex with their fleets, because the majority of UFOs we have been seeing since about the early 70s has been the UFO fleets from the military industrial complex. So they've been given the orders to be a bit more discreet in the way they go about functioning. And it's kind of like, what was it, Harry Potter? And they weren't allowed to be seen in the public domain. They had to stay behind in their wizardry realm. Do you know what I mean? It was against their laws to actually go and interact with the general people in the public domain. So
Well, that rule and line of thinking too, or universal law, I would say, also makes me question on whether we will be visited by some kind of benevolent force, because we're at a apex in our civilization in our existence right now, where we're basically judging ourselves. Do we have a right to exist? Period. We've created technologies that can blow up worlds. We've created technologies that can completely pollute our planet, and we have polluted our planet to a point that's, it can be irreparable when you look at it from a humanity view. If you look at it from the grand scale of the Earth, of course, the Earth will regenerate itself after 50,000 years, after 100,000 years. But will man still be here? I don't know about that. But we're definitely judging ourselves, and so I wonder if there are beings who are watching and just sitting back and saying, well, let's see, what these earthlings are going to do. Will they raise their consciousness, or will they fall? And ultimately it's up to us. And that's it. But we are being manipulated, I think, by dark forces, and we have been manipulated from the beginning of time. I tend to go along Sitchin's line of thinking because that's the one that makes the most sense to me. That extraterrestrials came at one point in time, genetically engineered us, created us to be slaves. That's why it's in our DNA that we want gold. Well, let's go back to the gold standard. I got to get a gold ring. I want to get a gold chain. I got to get a gold ring for my wife with a diamond on it. It's because it's programmed into our DNA. But we've always been slaves, and that's why we are slaves now. And without realizing that we are slaves, we're going to continue to believe that we're free, and we're never going to be able to break the chains if we don't actually see the chains. And I think that's why Sitchin's work is so important, even if it's flawed, because it makes you realize we were created in bondage, we're still living in bondage, and we have to break away that bondage. But I think the religions and the churches and everything that's sprung up is ultimately worshiping these extraterrestrials. And they may not even be evil in the sense of, having horns and pitchforks and wanting to poke you in the butt with them. It's they do what they do, and manipulating a lower species is the same way that we use horses to pull plows and things like that. I mean, that's the way they see us, as lower level life forces, but we're evolving. And as we evolve, we can start to make our own choices and our own decisions. So maybe the Vatican is preparing for the return of these creatures, and they want to say, look at the order that we've created on the earth. Look at all the gold that we have for you here. We've been good servants. Take us up to your planet. Who knows?
And I think that message has been really delivered strongly through this series of movies called The Planet of the Apes.
Ah, yes.
It's very metaphorical, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
if you realize that we're actually the apes in that movie.
You know what's funny is there was a South Park episode. I don't know if you've ever seen this show, South Park, but
No, I haven't.
they were making a little it's like a little cartoon, but it's an adult cartoon, and it's just a bunch of really ridiculous things. But one of the shows showed one of the kids going into the future, and in the future the world was run by otters. Wow. And the otters had evolved. But just recently I saw a video where a little sea lion or otter or something goes up, he jumps into somebody's boat, he starts demanding things from the boat, and then goes back into the ocean and swims away. And I'm looking at it and going, wow, they're evolving.
Yeah.
Maybe they were onto something there. Maybe there is some other species that's evolving, and we just simply don't realize it, and we're being faded out while the other one's being faded in. Who knows?
That's another way of looking at it. That's awesome.
Right, right.
Fantastic. Well, I'm feeling that the energies are slowly winding up here, Chris. Don't know if you're feeling it too. If there's something else that you would like to share with, in a parting gesture, because I didn't actually get the chance to explain about these draconian forces and the tall whites. It was a very, very intense interaction that I had, and I just wanted to ask if you've had anybody else in your travels that has been discussing this sort of interaction.
Well, the draconian forces, no, but I don't know if I ever told you, but I've been visited by the tall whites
No.
since I was, since I was a
Wow.
kid. My mother actually took me to a psychiatrist at 4 or 5 years old because I kept telling her these visitors were coming at night. What the hell do I know at 4 or 5 years old, but to tell her what I was seeing? The
Yeah.
psychiatrist tried to convince me that this wasn't happening. Last encounter I had with him that I remember, there could have been more, but last encounter that I remember was about 10 years ago. But basically, I remember this encounter very, very in detail. And it was only after speaking to many people like yourself and other ufologists and researchers that I started to recognize these as real experiences as opposed to dreams. I used to call them dreams.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did actually mention this to me. I remember now. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But you mentioned the tall whites at the very beginning, and it's very interesting to hear about their agenda because I still don't quite understand.
Okay,
But
now the tall whites that I have been in contact with recently, who they contacted me because of another person, because one of their people are incarnated in this world, and it has to do with the functionality of time, because they're experts in time. They're one of the races that know more about time than pretty much any other race. They're up there with the top handful of races that know about time in the universe. And they traverse time. And what they physically look like is not, as in the tall whites, like Nordic human-looking tall whites, is what the what the tall whites have been known to look like by what we hear from other people in our genre. That's going around the internet at the moment, from ex-military sources, or people, whistleblowers who are coming out and talking about the tall whites. This group of tall whites is different. They have a bit more of a greyish sort of look.
that's the ones I've encountered. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Now they're really, really high level in technology. I haven't actually gone ahead and done too much of what they were sort of wanting me. They asked a few things of me, like they insinuated that maybe I should discuss this in the public and that in the public. And I haven't really gone ahead and done too much of that. I'm just talking about some bits of the interaction, the exchange that I feel is important, that I wanted to share with the public, because when they presented themselves to me, this group of tall whites, they're a breakaway group from the original, what I will call the Hive mind. It's been really, really there's a long story why they are a breakaway group. But anyway, they created a new timeline where the main hive, because their main hive, they saw it as it has become diseased. So for them, the state of the mental, of the mind and the framework is of utmost importance. So when someone thinks differently in their race, it is felt instantly by everybody in the race, because they're in the collective hive mind situation. And they're all ruled by the hive. It's really interesting. And this group made an alternative timeline because they didn't like the way the main hive was heading. It became very self-righteous and self-serving in their own, and enamored in their own self-serving ego. And so this group created this alternative timeline and has been not hiding, but existing in this alternative timeline, breaking away from the main group. Now they have come to this world now and presented themselves. Now the situation is, by them presenting themselves to me and making themselves known in the Matrix, has thrown a huge spanner in the works with all these other races that are here meddling with the military and everybody behind the scenes, because the timeline they have come from is different from the main hive. And the main hive is the group that is here messing with our timeline, is working with other interdimensional races, is working with this God entity, is in collaboration with all that, and they're the ones that are focusing on the construction of the timeline they wish to sever the human race off and into. So can you understand what's going on here? So here's this other group that has come in and said, "Hey, we're from a different timeline. We're a breakaway group. Our main hive has become sick, has become diseased. We not a part of that group. We're with the human race and the soul, the original intent of the human race being created here on Earth, and this birthing into this new humanity that both the planet and the soul, the group soul essence of the human being as a whole, like our whole, intended to be." So you've got a breakaway group, and they're seen as traitors and as rebels by the main hive, and so it's thrown a really big spanner in the works for the military and all this collaboration that's going on behind the scenes just by them presenting themselves to me.
Let me ask you this. Could it be that this breakaway group is also here to interact with us in order to teach us how to break away from our hive mind, which is sick and demented and going down the complete wrong path?
It is. And one of their people who was incarnate in their race left their race and became in the universe what's known as a Time Lord. And Time Lords play a very important role in the creation of realities because they need to synchronize the timings. Like if you look at the way the galaxies are moving around the universe and planets, and stars move around within inside a galaxy, the whole thing is synchronized like clockwork. And Time Lords play a very, very important role. They're very, a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of Time Lords because the way they have to set up a reality and all the soul agreements. So let's say you set up a planet, and somebody's going to come into that planet a million years down the track in its development, then all that needs to be synchronized, the timing of everything to come together. The environment has to be right. Everything has to be right for that race or those beings to come and have the experience that their soul intended. So the communication on a soul level with all beings has to be there on a universal creator level. You've got to know everything about everyone. And then let's say you're going to have 4 billion years down the track, a race is going to come. Well, everything from that million years down to that 4 billion years has to be synchronized because that experience needs to be set up exactly how it intended it to be. So you can imagine all the natural environment, all the beings, all the spirits involved in the mineral kingdom, the tree kingdom, the aquatic kingdom, the insect kingdoms, everything for 4 billion years has to be synchronized. All the spirits that ever come and incarnate as an insect, as a tree, as a rock, everything. It's just phenomenal when you begin to understand how much responsibility is on the shoulders of a Time Lord. So anyway, this Time Lord is incarnate here on Earth. I'm in communication with that being. The authorities behind the scenes know because they monitor our Skype conversation. So I'm not trying to hide anything from them. And so the way this reality is being severed in the way of time and the timeline has been manipulated. That's why so many of us had this amazing expectation around 2012 and it never actually occurred, with one of the reasons being that our timeline was completely manipulated. So the event didn't end up occurring the way we thought it would, or we felt it was going to occur because of the connection we had to our existing timeline. So it's really fascinating with these tall whites now coming in and saying, hey, your timeline's being totally manipulated. Our group is trying to manipulate your timeline. We're here to actually help you repair your timeline when the time comes, and we will do what we need to do when we need to do it.
I've noticed them messing with the timeline. I think we've spoken about this before. I've noticed buildings pop up overnight. I've noticed fields where buildings used to be. I've noticed stores that I would go to completely disappear and are no longer there. You don't even see a trace of them anymore. The best example that I have is we used to fill up our 5-gallon water bottles at a reverse osmosis place that was right around the corner from our house. One day we went, it was gone. Completely gone. No signs of it, nothing, period. And then we noticed some buildings popping up over here, right down by the freeway that weren't there. I mean, whole hotel rooms and office buildings and everything just poop overnight where a field used to be. And Cherie and I both this very distinctively. Yeah. So I can see the remnants of them messing with the timeline. And I've talked about this for a couple of years now, the possibilities of all this. The thing about time, though, is I don't understand how time is an illusion because even in the DMT realm and in my heavy ayahuasca experiences, there's always some kind of measurement of time. Now, hours and seconds and minutes cease to exist. However, I still see maybe a geometric pattern that's turning, and I can count how many times it's turning. So there's always a measurement of time. You go outside of the Earth and you've got the Earth spinning around the sun, and then you've got the galaxy spinning around, and you've got the galaxy moving. There's always a measurement of time. So I don't know, if you have a few moments, can you like maybe try to explain how time is all on top of each other as opposed to some kind of measurement?
Yeah, instead of measuring time, view time as a life cycle. Time is really life cycle interwoven with another life cycle. That's all time really is. We then look at that life cycle and we then impose a measuring system onto it. And we call that time. But that's not really what time is. Time is really a life cycle. So it's the existence of a intended creation becomes manifest, and it's manifest for a period of time. In other words, its duration. It's the duration of a creation being manifest into its existence. That's all time is. And so when you have one that is coexisting with another or interacting with another, you have all these cycles within cycles. You have all this interwoven, interlinking. And that's why these races use time to travel. They use time to travel. Let's say when we talked about bilocation before, that's the use of unconditional love. So I would feel into, let's say, your space-time location. I would know exactly where everything is situated, tables, chairs, for example. I would also know that when I bilocate to that location, is it in my best interest, in your best interest, in the interest of everybody who will experience me existing in that moment? I will also put a new spike of energy into the matrix in that moment from that location on the planet. That will then have a ripple effect from that moment on to eternity of my presenting myself in that location instead of being here. So there's all these factors that get taken into consideration when we just want to bilocate from one location to another. We actually have the deep, complete understanding of the consequences of our bilocation. And then we go into, is it in my soul's journey? What sort of, consequences and karmic charges will I then put upon myself for turning up there and bilocating? That's why we can't do it yet, because we're not, our higher selves won't allow us to do it yet, because we're not supposed to be doing it yet in relation to the way this whole reality is playing out. So it's more than just what we want to achieve from a level of a personal ego. But I will use the law of attraction. So my intention to be next to you in your location, I will then disappear from this location and reappear. Because at the moment, my intention to exist here is stronger than my ego's want to come to be next to you in my bilocation process. So once we get to that depth of level of understanding, then it comes down to the power of intention, and is it in synchronicity with the way the reality is moving forward?
I was in contact with a being that when I came back and described it to Cherie, Cherie said that it's very similar to what Terence McKenna described as the Godhead. It was this large being that had, it looked like a Mayan temple with the Egyptian symbolism all over it. There was a pyramid with an eye on it. It was just this incredibly symbolic being that just beamed this ball of energy from its eye into my third eye, and it was just beaming me full of energy, full of information. And I was telling it, I was trying to. It was the one part of the experience where I was in a total loss of control, but I was trying to get a word in and saying, "Hey, slow down! I don't understand what you're giving me. Slow down!" And it just kept telling me, "Don't, just take it. Just take it. You'll know what to do with it later. Just take it. You'll know what to do with it later." One of the pieces of information that it gave me was time travel and how time travel. Well, and again, it's an ayahuasca experience. So was it subjective or was it an actual intelligence that I encountered? And these questions keep going through my mind. But anyways, time is a spiral. And in order to get from point A to point B, rather than going around in the spiral, we can actually break through like a spiraling staircase. We can just go from one level to another instead of spiraling all around.
Yeah.
And that's the way it kind of explained it to me.
Yep.
It still doesn't make sense to me though, but maybe later I'll understand it when the time is ready.
Yeah, because you go with your intention, you know to which point in time you want to go to. So do you want to go when something was first birthed? Well, then you travel, you bypass all of um, the structure as the mind perceives it. Because to be able to bilocate or travel through time in the way that I'm explaining it, is we need to get past all the mental understanding of time. That includes the way consciousness perceives time, because consciousness is cosmic mind energy. It's the mind on a cosmic level is what consciousness is. So soul is so your mind on this level becomes consciousness on a cosmic level. Your heart on this level becomes soul on a cosmic and universal level. So we need to get into soul level of knowledge and wisdom and activity, because it's at the more deeper foundational levels rather than the mind or the consciousness level of things. So to understand how to travel through time and traverse time on that level is to understand the requirements of everything involved in your intended travel. And you can go anywhere in the universe, do anything, be anything, because you might need to go somewhere and actually appear in that reality as something else so you don't interfere with that reality. You know what I'm saying? Or your interference with that reality is minimal. So you need to shapeshift into something else. You need to experience yourself as a different life form. And then when you're as that life form, you have to understand the dynamics, the characteristics, the machinations of that life form to go into that reality and be that life form. Otherwise, you're going to create too much of a disturbance in that reality.
Right, the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
The butterfly swing, and then on the other side of the world, a hurricane happens.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally understand. Let me ask you one more question, if you don't mind. There's a paradox. There seems to be a paradox with these lower level beings. On one hand, they exist on the lower planes and the lower frequencies. On the other hand, they seem to have abilities that transcend our third dimensional abilities. They seem to have the ability of telepathy, bilocation, interdimensional travel, et cetera, et cetera. Any insight on how that paradox is not a paradox?
Can I get you to ask me that question again? Yeah, ask me that question one more time.
Okay. These lower level beings that they operate in a lower dimension, lower dimensional force or lower energetic force, yet they seem to have abilities that at least we as third dimensional beings attribute to higher dimensions.
Yeah. It seems like a paradox. It does. Unless you, how can I word this? There's no other way to word it. Unless you take into consideration my model of the universe. Yeah. So to say that here in the third dimension, we're at the lowest of the lows and everything that is in an energetic form is actually of a high vibration, that's just nonsense. That's total nonsense. It's not the way the universe is constructed. We're programmed to believe that because of our density, we're at the bottom, and that's just not true. We're in the most dense reality because of fractalization and compression. We're in the womb of the Divine Mother here. This is why this reality is so dense. There are, and us being in the so-called third dimension doesn't mean the second dimension is plant kingdom, for example, or insect kingdom or animal kingdom. That's the way some people choose to look at it. For me, the second dimension is full of life and it exists on a totally different vibratory level, but is of a lower vibratory realm. There's more like your traditional reptilian and draconian and grey races that come from those, even though there's draconian and reptilian and grey races that come from the fourth dimension. But there's the ones that live in the second dimension, for example, have an even lesser respect for life. They're more self-oriented, they're more aggressive, they're more clinical in their way. And then there's ones in the first dimension, which are just physical form and pure energetic form, but that is the worst because that is the most outer reaches of the universe. That is the universe, you can look at it in a hierarchical way from top to bottom and say, yeah, the first dimension is the lowest. You know, you can also flip it and say, well, when we first entered the universe, we've got the first realm of expression, then we went to the second degree of expression. So you can flip it and say, well, the 12th dimension is really the lowest. Or you can look at it from the point of view as when you first enter the universe, that's center, and the dimensions actually go outwards. So really,
Ah, okay.
yeah. So here in the third, what we traditionally know as the third realms, we're two away from the most outer reaches and the coldest, if you could say, energetically speaking, and so the when we what we call higher vibration is really going towards center vibration. So our soul is in the center of our creations in this universe, and so beings exist, civilizations, hierarchies exist in the second dimension and the first dimension, which could be considered the outer membranes of the universe. So I'm just finding the wording to explain it to you better to answer your question. So when we want to think about beings that are just in pure energetic form and they can bilocate, they can move around, they can shapeshift and everything, that happens in every dimension. Every single dimension, the expression of life in an energetic form and the capabilities of that energy to move through realities is there. Not saying all beings who are in energetic form can do it. Some can do it. There are beings who are in physical form. There are civilizations, planetary systems, star systems. When we look out at the stars, we can't see the other planets in our solar system that exist in other dimensions, but they're there. We can't see stars that are nearby, but they're there, but they're in other dimensions, but we can't see them because they're in different frequency. There's stars and planets that are nearby that exist in the second and the first dimension, but we can't see them. There are stars and planets nearby that exist in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh dimensions, but we can't see them.
That makes a lot of sense. That cleared it up. I've always seen things as a hierarchy, as a ladder, as opposed to as maybe a sphere with the outside coming in to center. And I guess center makes a lot more sense now. We want to get back to center. We want to get back to source in the very, the nucleus of it all.
Nucleus of it all, exactly.
That makes sense. Definitely. Yeah. It's been absolutely fascinating. I can't believe almost 3 hours has gone by.
No
so
way.
quick.
Is that right? We had our pre-record chat, but we've been recording now for 2 hours and 24 minutes. So there you go. That's just brilliant. And it always goes quick with you and I. We transcend time, don't we?
Yes, we do. We got to get you on our show here pretty soon as well.
Oh, I'd love to come back on, just with the relocation and everything going on at the moment. I'll let you know. Okay, so Chris and Cherie, we didn't get to hear much from Cherie. She's not feeling well, so we understand that.
She's still looking as beautiful as can be, though.
I'm still here. I'm still hanging in there. Yeah, but it's been a fascinating discovery with you guys tonight. It's I think we're headed in the right direction as far as humanity is concerned. We just need a little push every once in a while to get us going.
Let me share a quick experience to leave with the audience. In this journey, it's been up and down, left and right. Like I said earlier, it's been love, it's been light, it's been hate, it's been torment, it's been everything. I've had my entire universe stripped away from me. My mother passed away, my whole family's gone. My dogs died, the two dogs that I had for 13 years. I've had everything just completely stripped away from me, but it's been replaced with something far better than I could ever imagine. And that's the way the universe works. It has to, destroy some stuff sometimes. And it's not necessarily destroying a negative way, but it takes
reconstructing the old.
Exactly. It removes elements from your life in order to replace them. So when you're going through the trials and tribulations and losses and everything that we experience in life, it's all for the better. It really is, because I don't think that anybody can look at a time in their life at a negative situation that they've gone through in hindsight and go, you know what, that was the most negative thing and it did nothing but hurt me. Because even the most negative experiences we can look back on and realize that they were positive. And if we can't, then that means that we haven't learned from that experience and we're doomed to repeat it if we don't. So we need to really go back and look at all the negative. I talked about this on air before. I was in prison when I was 17 years old for a year. And I think the first time I talked about it was when we had you on. And It was the most negative experience I've ever been through. In hindsight, it turned me into who I am now. As soon as I went in, they put me in the cell with this huge black guy, Bubba, that they're always telling you about. Bubba's, you don't want to go to prison because Bubba's going to get you. And he wound up teaching me about the Illuminati, about the Masons, about the 666 beast system, about how religion is a complete paradigm and phony and all of this. And I mean, for 3 months, he just sat there and just taught me all this stuff in the most I would never expect to learn this in prison. And I realized that I had to see the worst of the worst in there. And also I learned a very valuable lesson while I was in there is don't judge people by the way they look. Don't judge people like that, period. Because if I wouldn't have talked to this guy, there's no way that I would have learned everything that I learned. But instead, I didn't judge and I spoke to this guy instead. And I saw the worst of the worst. I've seen what it's like to have my freedom completely stripped away, living like an animal. I've come out of it. And I can appreciate freedom that much more now. And I also was introduced to conspiracies at the very, very early. So even that most negative situation, which it was hell, it was the worst situation I've ever been through in my life. Still, in hindsight, it's a positive situation. So we have to always look at everything that happens in a positive way. If I didn't have everything that happened in Texas and all of that and didn't have things stripped away from me, I wouldn't be here in Colorado with Cherie. If Cherie and I didn't throw caution to the wind and just completely leave our fiancés and husbands and everything, we wouldn't be doing Truth Frequency.
Exactly.
If we didn't go through all the BS with all the other networks, we wouldn't have built our own network. It all works together. So we always have to remember that when we're going through these experiences.
Yeah, it's the fire that is the catalyst for alchemy. So
yes.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Chris, incredible words of wisdom. What I love about you and Cherie is your authenticity, your genuine nature, and your true soul expression. I love you, just so real and honest and grounded people. I absolutely love you guys.
Thank you. We feel the same about you as well. And you and Cynthia. Yes, we love you guys too, for sure. And you've been inspirations to us. You've taught us so much. And I think that's what it's all about, is we can each help each other out. And it's amazing because we don't even realize we're doing it sometimes. Like the David Whitehead situation. He had no idea that he was helping me move in that other direction. And I had no idea that I was helping him. We just do what we do. And then we realize that we're really making an impact on everybody around us. And it all works together. And then the soul families really start to come back together. Like my friend's baby. I know that she's part of our soul family. She was somebody before. We've known her for a long time. She's going to grow up to be an amazing, amazing person. And I'm glad that we have children like that we can pass the batons to.
Brilliant. Brilliantly said. We are a great man of great wisdom, and it's been truly an honor to have had you and Cherie. Words unspoken, but you spoke volumes with your energy. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Now, Chris, people may not know, but Chris is also a musician. And if you don't mind, Chris, may I have permission to read out that line that you shared with me on Skype the other day?
Absolutely. But you have to stop talking to me like that, George, because you're going to give me a big head and then my ego is going to get all out of control and all that.
Oh, that's all right. Cherie can run down the road and scratch your nose for you if you like.
Okay, yep. Fantastic.
Well, I'll tell you what, here is the quality of the wisdom that I'm energetically trying to share with you. These are lyrics from a song that Chris has recently written, and the line goes like this. I've stood tall like a soldier ringing liberty bells, and I've drank just the same from every poisonous well. But still every time I fell, I landed back on my feet, still giving sight to the blind and strength to the weak. Wow. That I've got goosebumps from head to toe, man. Your soul has touched me through that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everybody. That was Chris Geo and Sheree Geo. Get over onto Truth Frequency. They've got amazing shows. Now you know what we're talking about. The man behind the microphone and the lady behind the microphone. What a duo. What a dynamic duo. Another amazing show on Superwoo Radio. I'm so appreciative of you, the listener, for hanging with us through this time. It's been a dynamic discussion. More wisdom, more enlightening information. Thank you once again. We'll see you next time on Superwoo Radio.